Well, day 2 of the week is here. Welcome to Tuesday on the AM show. Je me présente, Benjamin Akakpo, c'est mon nom. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. It's a pleasure having you join me this morning. And what can you expect in a bit? The news, and right after the news review. The Sisala East legislator, Mohamed Bataglia, joins us for a conversation together with, from the other end, the MPP's Communications Directorate, Dr. Acheampong. Both of them will join us for that segment. It's going to be incisive, it's going to be critical. You want to stay for that. After which we'll serve you sports with Muftar Nabila Abdullah. And then we get into our big stories. Now, today, it's a one-stop shop for all of us. The Finance Minister, Dr. Theo Acheampong, is presenting the maiden budget for Ghana and for his party for 2025 after assuming power. The budget is expected to cut down government expenditure significantly, with fulfilling the NDC's manifesto, as well as addressing some economic issues. The question we have on our minds, which ones will go? Will VAT increase, for example? How will the tax net be widened? What can we expect from the budget? We'd love to hear your views on that. But we'll also take you live to Parliament for this event, as well as have some panel discussions right here in the studio, all the way to the event at 10 a.m. So we'd love you to join us with your thoughts on all our social media handles in the course of the show. And should we activate the phone lines, be one of those to call. But for now, thank you for staying. Allow me to serve you the news up next. Thank you for staying for the news. Let's get into our first story. Stakeholders in the construction industry are calling on the finance minister to take into consideration the subsidy of the cost of building materials as the government prepares for its budget presentation later today. Now, Finance Minister Theo Acheampong is expected to present the government's fiscal policy for the year later today. Daniel Oheniedu, project manager for cities and habitats, explains that in decongesting Accra, government must seek support of the private sector. We'll hear from him shortly, but first, let's hear from former Deputy Minister for Finance, Stephen Amwa, charging government to focus on fiscal consolidation and the key economic indicators in its budget presentation.
Profit after tax normally is very difficult. I'm just getting a hint of the fact that they want to tax turnovers. If that is so, then it's extremely unacceptable, very damaging. I hope it is not so. But honestly speaking, me as somebody who has some sort of knowledge or expertise in that area, I think they should be able to let us see that our fiscal consolidation will be number one. And if that will happen, government has to take the right decisions when it comes to most of the primary macro indicators, in the areas such as health, in the areas such as education, in the areas particularly agriculture, industry, and service. We need to have very definite, specific decisions made by the government, and not just the decisions in the budget, but make sure that we can realize these areas. We can materialize them, we can achieve them. We can have that material impact, not just rhetorics. And not to repeat the usual recycling of political games just for Ghanaians to be happy. Then at the end of the day, they don't really get the material returns or need. I think these are the things we need to look at.
Well, let's now hear from Daniel Oheniedu, project manager for cities and habitats, calling for collaboration between government and the private sector in developing and decongesting across housing.
It's already choked. We all know the developments are coming this way, eastward. Westward, you can say, but a lot for the eastward, this direction. So we are kind of pulling a lot of. There is a certain decongestion of Accra. At the end of the day, the population is still increasing every day. People are coming from the hinterlands, and those in Accra are also, growing up. Yes, and the working class is also growing. So it's quite significant. We are contributing to a major, housing or property deficit that we have. We know the numbers are in the millions.
Now, the president of the Ghana Institute of Surveyors, Surveyor Kwame Obeng-Agyenath, has called on President John Mahama to involve surveyors in the fight against illegal mining and the reclamation of lands destroyed by miners. He made this appeal during the Institute's week-long celebration in Accra. There's more in this report.
The president of the Ghana Institute of Surveyors, Dr. Anthony Akweje, speaking at a media engagement to launch the 20th Surveyors Week in Accra, stated that the institute will support the president with data on land degraded by illegal miners to assist the reclamation of destroyed lands. He emphasized that the president cannot effectively fight galamsey without the support of surveyors.
On environmental sustainability and illegal mining, what we call galamsey. The rise in illegal mining has significantly degraded Ghana's environment. Surveyors provide critical data for land reclamation, environmental impact assessment, and sustainable land management. We have the tools, we have the knowledge that will be able to use to assist the government to fight this menace that is destroying our environment.
According to him, the institute is enhancing public awareness of the role of surveyors to help address the issue of unqualified practitioners in the country.
The institution is intensifying its advocacy for the Surveying Council Bill, a regulatory framework essential for maintaining professional standards, eliminating unqualified practitioners, and safeguarding industry integrity.
This year's celebration is themed Harnessing and Projecting Survey Competencies, a catalyst for national development and enhancing emerging opportunities.
In our next story, the Member of Parliament for Ahafo South East, Yakubu Mohammed, says Parliament is working to boost women's political appointments from 30% to 45% under the Affirmative Action Act. The law, passed in 2024, aims at bridging the gender gap in governance. But can this bold push for equality become a reality? There's more in this report.
Law is to ensure the achievement of gender equality in political, social, economic, educational, and cultural spheres in Ghana. A Canadian non-governmental organization supporting rural women, Soko Devi, as part of events commemorating International Women's Day, has been educating women in agricultural areas on the Act at Abeswa near Edujama in the Ashanti region. Member of Parliament for the Ahafo South East constituency, Yakubu Mohammed, says women who are marginalized and vulnerable must be protected at all times.
I think that the right of women is something that we need to have much attention on, and that is why I'm so happy with the affirmative law that has been passed by Parliament for women to have a percentage. Currently we are working on it so that we can even have about 45% of women in governance.
Meanwhile, Gender Equality Coordinator for Together Project, one of the flagship programs of Soko Devi, revealed the NGO is supporting women in cooperative groups in cocoa production areas with alternative but sustainable income generating projects.
We celebrated it to give them that opportunity to access information about the new act, the new Gender Equity Act of Ghana. We use this opportunity to educate them about them.
I'm Interior Reports for Joy News.
Now, a renowned Ghanaian-born US-based surgeon, Dr. John DeGraff Johnson, is advocating for the establishment of tele-manipulation surgical centers in Ghana to bring world-class medical care closer to the people. Dr. DeGraff Johnson explains that this advanced system enables surgeons to perform even the most complex procedures remotely with unmatched precision and accuracy. He is urging Ghanaian authorities to immediately embrace the technology to revolutionize healthcare and cut unnecessary medical travel costs. Carlos Caloni has the rest of the story.
Telemanipulation surgery is a remote-controlled technique that enables surgeons to perform procedures using robotic assistance, ensuring greater precision, accuracy, and minimally invasive interventions. Dr. John DeGraft Johnson, a Ghanaian-born US-based top surgeon specializing in robotic-assisted surgery, highlights the technology's efficiency in performing complex procedures without the need for direct human contact.
What we are talking about is the idea called telemanipulation surgery. What does that mean? It means that one sits at a consult, manipulating the technology, and it's a remote arm that's operating on the patient. What it is that you just kind of control it, and it transmits your movement to the distal end of the tentacles that allows you to operate on the patient. In order for me to access your heart, for example, during an open heart surgery, it requires me to, number one, take a knife, cut the skin to the breastbone. Then I need a saw to literally saw open your breastbone.
Wow.
Then I need to put a retractor to spread open those breastbone to gain access into your chest to start conducting the preparation. So one can imagine the trauma that it takes to go through all the layers of the skin, the muscles, then the bone, and then spreading it open to gain access just to do the surgery. What if we don't have to do that? Suddenly we are avoiding the collateral damage that we deem necessary to gain access. So we are sneaking in between the ribs, gaining access through tiny little incisions and doing the exact same surgery we will be doing, except we are avoiding the access to your chest by, quote unquote, cracking your chest open.
Dr. DeGraft Johnson revealed that nearly all types of surgeries can be performed using this advanced technology, significantly minimizing surgical risk.
There's a variety of surgeries. So the garden variety of surgeries is, let's say, prostate disease. When you have open prostate surgery, your risk of impotence is significantly high. However, if this done using the robot, your risk of impotence is almost near zero. Because of precision, you don't have to destroy too many things to get to where you need to go. Okay. For our ladies that need fibroid surgeries and things of that nature, it can be used for that.
Dr. DeGraft Johnson is urging policymakers in Ghana's health sector to take immediate action in establishing a tele-manipulation surgical center. He emphasizes that this will eliminate the need for Ghanaians to travel abroad for advanced medical care, ensuring world-class treatment is accessible at home.
The idea behind this technology is essentially democratizing healthcare in remote parts of the world, whereby perhaps they may not have access to higher level of care.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Suddenly, we have a young lady who is found to have a hole in her heart. They need to have that repaired. The surgery is expensive. Perhaps, we have experts here, or we do not have the experts here. And the patient has to be sent outside Ghana. As you know, the world is changing. Some places may say, we're not going to grant you the visa. Or even if they will, it has to go through the natural bureaucratic process that it takes. And what is not allotted to the patient is the luxury of time, waiting for the bureaucratic process to play out. What if a well-willing surgeon here in Ghana says, you know what, no problem. Let me call a friend, a colleague outside of Ghana, anywhere in the world, that can join me in helping do your surgery remotely. This brings about a collaboration in healthcare that never before been seen.
Dr. DeGraft Johnson believes establishing a single tele-manipulation center here in Ghana will revolutionize healthcare in the country. For Joy News, Carlos Keloni, Accra.
Well, on our next story, the women's leader of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, Loretta Nade Ashi, has reminded the government of its 120-day campaign promise to end menstrual poverty in schools. Speaking at the International Women's Day celebration in Wa, she urged Finance Minister Dr. Cassie Alatoforsen to include free sanitary pads for schoolgirls in his maiden budget on March the 11th. Joy News' Rafiq Salam reports from WA.
The Socialist Movement of Ghana, in partnership with the officers of the LSRC, NUC's Women Commissioners of the Simon Diedon Dombo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies, held a symposium at the campus of the university to mark the International Women's Day. They had participants drawn from some second cycle and tertiary institutions in the region. Women's leader of Socialist Movement of Ghana, Loretta Nadia Ashi, used the opportunity to remind the government of its 120-day promise of ending menstrual poverty among girls in schools. She urged the Finance Minister, Dr. Cassiel Atoforson, to include in his maiden budget slated for Tuesday the provision of free sanitary pads for girls in schools.
Menstruation is a biological thing. Menstruation, no girl goes to knock on menstruation's door. Menstruation comes to us because it's biological and it is part of our being. And we think that it is a social responsibility. As a country that thinks of its women, girls must be provided with sanitary pads so that they can bleed with dignity. Girls have to sell sex just to get money to take care of themselves that time of the month. It hasn't been easy with girls in the rural area especially, or with people in working class communities, because spending 30 cedis, it is even more than our minimum wage. It doesn't add up. We think that the finance minister should incorporate the bill, the budget that is going to provide sanitary products for girls in it, so that women can have, girls who go to school can have free, dignified periods.
Another speaker at the symposium was an international development practitioner, Ida Nakar, who wants the world to see gender equality not just as a goal, but a way of life.
52% of women being women. However, it is literally, we are in a man's world, but the woman or the girl is as intelligent, innovative, creative as the man. But you look at most leadership or positions of influence or positions of power, it is held by the men. Does that mean that the women, we are not capable? Does that mean that women, we don't have those issues, or we don't have the capabilities or the skills that we need to be there? So today we are celebrating and also saying that women, we are capable, women, we have what it takes to be there, and we are appreciating the efforts that every woman is doing in their own small corner.
A patron of the Socialist Movement of Ghana and lecturer at SDD Yobets, Dr. Eunice Yogri, threw further light on the program.
Women form parts and half of the ceiling or half of the sky, and women are striving hard to break barriers to get to where they want to be. Considering the fact that women are limited in opportunities, this program is meant to expose the opportunities to women so that they can also leverage on that to strive harder and get to where they want to go. When you go to a community, you have a lot of women who, in quotes, I would say, are idling, which, when given the slightest opportunity or the iota of opportunity, they can, in fact, move barriers and make great differences.
Now, the Simon Diedon Dombo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies has inducted its oldest junior member, 68-year-old Professor Na Daniel Baga. The former UDS WA Campus Dean and ex-Council of State member has enrolled for a Bachelor of Laws degree. Adding to the moment, his 24-year-old daughter, Portia Daniel Baga, also took the matriculation oath alongside him. Joy News' Rafiq Salam reports from WA.
There was thunderous applause that echoed around the new auditorium when the Vice-Chancellor of the Simon Diedon Dombo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies, SDD Yobes, Professor Emmanuel K. Derble, introduced him as one of the matriculates for the LLB program.
This is the man that laid the foundations for this campus, for this university, as foundation dean of this campus. This man was my lecturer, and he contributed to molding me into who I am today.
Professor Na Daniel Baga was the foundation dean of the WA campus of the University for Development Studies. He is the immediate past Council of State member and the chief of Nyambale in the Nodulukeleo district. The 68-year-old former dean did not sit at the front pew as he is used to, but sat among fellow matrons, more than half of them fit to be his children or grandchildren. One of them is his 24-year-old daughter, Portia Daniel Baga. He took the matriculation oath with her.
I was excited to see her just standing by me. You see, and honestly, if I tell you, that's even one of the reasons why I did it. I was trying to encourage her to do law because she did, real estate management. And I said that, well, you can do law and add it to your real estate. But she was thinking that now she wouldn't do it. I said, okay, if you won't do it, I'll go and do it. I'll go and do it. So I even bought my phone before she also said, oh, Dad, if you will do it, I'll also do it.
Professor Daniel Baga shed further light on why he enrolled at the UBITS Law School.
I want to indicate to my colleagues here that age, even though I'm old, age shouldn't be a barrier for the desire to learn more. So my coming to enroll into the legal profession or the LLB program is to serve as a motivator for my colleagues who are even younger, much younger than me, but who think they are too old, to want to venture into education again. In fact, immediately after the matriculation, a lot of them came saying that, oh, next year we are also going to enroll.
For this year's Ramadan season, the Central Regional NDC outfit has donated some food items to the Zango caucus community in the region. According to the Central Regional NDC chairman, Professor Richard Acheampong, the party wants to express its support for the Muslim brothers and sisters in the Central region through these food items so Ramadan can be an easy one for them. Abigail Nkrumah Essel has more in this report.
The food items, which included rice, oil, milk, sugar, among others, were donated to the Zongo caucus community of the Central Region by the Central Regional Outfit of the National Democratic Congress, NDC. Speaking to Joy News, the Central Regional NDC chairman, Professor Richard Acheampong, says this period of Ramadan requires a lot of food items, which has prompted the party to make the donation.
We have realized that they are embarking on the annual Ramadan. The Ramadan goes with prayers and abolition for the country. So being our brothers from the other side, I'm a Christian anyway, we have to support the group with some items. What they normally use during this period is sugar, milk and those things. So the regional party sat down and decided to buy these food items for the Zongo caucus community in the central region. I think this will go a long way in supporting the Ahmadiyya sect, the Al-Sunnah sect, and the type of Al-Tijaniya sect in the region. We have decided to give a lot of bags to the various sects to share among its members in the region. And the party also has a Zongo caucus wing, that is Zongo caucus coordinators. We're also going to give them a number of bags to support their various constituencies. So in all, Central Region Chairman and his team have done so well. And we are praying that God will continue to shower his blessings on us through the Ramadan period so that Ghana will be blessed and blessed and blessed. So that John Mahama will get all the glory and the blessings from God to rule this country well and possibly to reset it for a better future.
Some constituency executives shared their excitement at the gesture.
In fact, very, very marvelous. First in history. I haven't seen that before. Because the chairman has made everything clear for everybody. There's 100 bags for every sect of Muslim. 100 bags for Tijaniyas, 100 bags for Al-Sunnah Jama'ah, and then 100 bags for Ahmadis. So every Muslim will enjoy it. I think it's better.
This is the first in history. We've never seen something like this before. And we thank Allah in the first place, and then we thank the regional chairman for his marvelous work that he has done for the Muslim communities in the Central Region.
From Cape Coast, Abigail Nkrumah reports for Joy News.
Well, let's get ready now to get into our business update for the morning. Well, to set the ball rolling, let's head right into our currency market for today. To our stories now, and Ghana's private sector is expectant as Finance Minister Dr. Kasilato Forson prepares to present the 2025 budget in Parliament tomorrow, actually today, with a call for stability of the macroeconomic indicators. Senior country partner of the accounting and finance firm PricewaterhouseCoopers Ghana, Theo Acheampong, tells Joy Business expectations are high, hence the need for government to inspire hope in the private sector.
Well, expectation of businesses are for the government to do exactly what George outlined earlier, to cut expenditure where it's not actually required. So that term he used, wasteful expenditure cuts, I think would be most welcome. But again, as I said in my initial comment, it's all about initiatives that provide stability and predictability. As you know, Pius, business people like a certain sense of predictability and certainty so they can plan. So everybody's looking forward to that. Everybody's looking forward to government consolidating its resources and putting it behind certain key sectors like a brick, like infrastructure, so that we don't spread ourselves too thin. If we can do just a few things properly, let's focus on those, get them done properly, and then also partner with the private sector by creating that environment that will allow the private sector to also play its part and maybe take some of the load off government in terms of financing, for example, capital expenditure, through PPP arrangements and such like. So I think there's a lot of optimism out there, and we wait to see what happens tomorrow.
Staying on the budget, many respondents in the 2025 pre-budget survey by auditing firm KPMG are calling for a framework document that will direct the implementation of the 24-hour economy. Partner in charge of clients and markets at KPMG, Theo Acheampong, has been speaking to Joy Business ahead of the budget presentation.
The 24-hour economy is one that has come out very strongly by respondents as one that they look up to for economic turnaround, right? And specifically, I think what they're looking for is a framework and a practical implementation approach to it. I mean, particularly if you look at it, basically, how it's going to create jobs, right? So it's looking for people to be more efficient, use more time, basically doing a lot more with people. So I think predominantly, there's a lot of goodwill for the 24-hour economy. Secondly, people are asking for a framework to support the specific actions that are required to implement this 24-hour economy. So for, countries that have implemented 24-hour economy, predominantly, I think it's based on activities that can run around the clock, right? So if you look at some services that, for example, manufacturing, if you structure yourself very well, you can produce within 24 hours. If you also provide the infrastructure for certain critical things like even agriculture, you can work 24 hours. So I think, as I said, people are looking for the policy framework to guide this implementation.
Let's now find out how the major commodities are trading on the international market. The AM News is done and dusted, of course, and we're serving you the News Review up next. We have two guests. Mohammed Bataglia is MP Sisala East, and we have Dr. Acheampong, NPP Communications Directorate member. Both of them join us for the conversation in a few minutes. Do stay. Welcome back on the AM show. We'll be heading into our news review in a bit, but before we do so, let me tell you about Waylead Properties. Are you thinking of a rewarding investment you can engage in? Well, Waylead Company Limited is your preferred choice for such an investment. Waylead Company Limited is a real estate company with several developments to its credit right here in Accra. So we're inviting you. Invest in our new development, Willow Lane. Yes, Willow Lane, where elegance will meet tranquility in the heart of Accra. We provide quality housing at an affordable cost and also with a flexible payment option. At Waylead Properties, we provide you with, guess what, 24-hour security, reliable power supply, and other social amenities to make your stay a memorable one. Just give us a call now on these numbers, 0240 111 119 or 0504 499 999. You can also visit us at www.waylead.org. It's as simple as that. And now we get into our news review segment. Our guests this morning, Sisala East legislator Mohamed Battaglia joins us. We also have Dr. Acheampong. She is with the MPP's Communications Directorate. Lady, gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
They say a man can never be careful unless he does what?
Complete that first.
Bukumbaku said something about a man wearing a white shirt.
Really?
Oh. Anyway, so you're in white this morning.
Yeah,
I don't know whether it's, you know, I can say you politicians. You politicians.
Maybe
if someday I get in there, we'll say we politicians. But as of now, it doesn't look like it. But you politicians, right? I know usually when it comes to a day like this, like at the Sona, you would have one side in white, another in black. But I could see or mine go. Another one says, yeah, or mine punto bao. Is that what you are doing today?
No, the funny thing is, those who were screaming on mine go not too long ago, just give them a few months and they will want the whole world to believe that now manna is raining from heaven.
But you are the same people saying, your spokesperson on the economy, Kojo Oponkroma, is saying that, government shouldn't paint an untruthful picture of the economy. But when the president did exactly that to some extent, you said that, he was fibbing. And now, so which is which? Because if it's...
See, we don't expect a gloomy picture to be painted. In fact, I came across something yesterday, and that's what I was going to spend my minute on.
Sure,
the report from Ghana Statistical Service that was talking about how much our economy has grown. Something like almost 6%, 1.2 trillion, right? If I'm not wrong. The number is 1.2 trillion, Ben, isn't it? And considering in 2017, we inherited an economy that was growing.
You mean the general output of our economy? Yes, that's what you're referencing?
Yes, was barely growing at about 3%. I mean, on that basis, it's a little funny how now we are being made to believe that the whole world is crashing down on us. Nothing is working. An economy that has been able to pay people, recruit people, embark on a lot of infrastructure projects. That's exactly what we mean by that. What we are being told and what we see on the ground doesn't really match exactly. We obviously went through something, but we are recovering. And that is the point that we hope that the government will not shy away from. There's nothing wrong with saying I've inherited a growing economy and I'm going to do better. You don't need to create the picture that we are literally in hell and I'm the savior when that is not so. That's the point we are trying to make, Ben.
Okay. I like the way when I smile, you look away because you think I'm up to something. Do you have any response to that? I have my own thoughts on that, but I'll share with her. But
clearly, I have. You know, it's just like the scenario of the butcher who fears knife.
The scenario of a butcher who fears a knife.
That's the scenario I have for bars. It's like, you know, she pointed out to 2017 where the inherited economy growing at the rate of 3% or thereabout. But before even 2017, there was a clear projection that the economy will be doing up to 8% based on systems put in place. We all understand that we went through a turmoil regarding energy crisis in this country between 2014 and 2016, where huge investment in terms of generation capacity has been done. The President, John Dramani Mahama, then indicated to the whole world that yes, if measures put in place, this economy will see a tremendous growth in 2027, hoping that we're going to continue. Unfortunately, we lost the election. So if we're seeing that, I am sure it is based on the foundations put in place. It's not like in 2017, we gave something to you that was just an empty box. No. there were monies in the sinking fund in other places like 250 million for you to be able to start on. Even that is why when you came in, the Planting for Food and Jobs program became the first thing because there was already money there lying for you to start. So I think that in 2017, we left a quite healthy economy for you. But now we are seeing the figures to be different, where even when you go to most of the state agencies, we are seeing the most accounts running negative, where we believe that the country has been, we inherited 721 billion debt of a country. We are looking at a huge import-driven economy. We are looking at a huge unemployment youth and many other things. Those are the things the president boldly said to the Ghanaian people that we will fix it, no matter how daunting the task is.
All right.
So I am sure, I wanted to use my 1 minute to say something, but I don't know whether I still have it.
I'll just, this was just a teaser.
Yeah, it was a teaser.
This was a response to her.
My dear sister.
Okay, so let me just say this, and then you will have 40 seconds, not 1 minute, to share any further thoughts, and we move. So, Doc, here's the thing. Economic growth is good, but especially if you look at even the trajectory of countries like Argentina, right, where Milei is turning things around, how they've had to tighten their belts and how uncomfortable some people have become. Economic growth in mere GDP terms and macroeconomic terms does not necessarily operate in a vacuum. That is why a lot of the time NDC and MPP governments have touted macroeconomic this and that, and yet the ordinary man on the street has shown them the door by booting them out in the election. If it doesn't trickle down to what we call the microeconomy and get down into people's pockets, it means literally nothing. But all these statistics you mentioned, I agree, they are positive, they are good, even on the back of COVID-19. But here's what claws away from them. When you've managed to do some of those, and then you have inflation, where it has gone to and where it has got to now, okay? Where Caselato Forsen says they want to bring it to single digits, I think about 8%. Then you have the exchange rate where it is. And then you have a debt situation as we have it. It erodes everything, practically everything you've done. So to the ordinary person, that's why in our country, it's highfalutin. Oh, we've done, and the ordinary person is like,
Okay, so
Kenke is still, you know.
I will agree
you get what I mean.
On a couple
so
of things
I'm not
and disagree on.
I'm not denouncing what you're saying, but I'm saying that politicians, NDC and MPP,
people want to.
Why sometimes you say these things and they mean nothing to the ordinary person? Are these factors?
But
they mean
do you agree that when the economy is larger and there's an overall larger amount of money running around, that means eventually governments will have access to be able to collect more taxes? That means a lot of the beautiful plans that the current administration wants to embark on, they will be able to have avenues to generate that revenue to be able to do.
Not necessarily. You know why? Part of why our economy is growing more is because our population is growing. Taxes. So if you had some things, especially with the indirect taxes, they are growing. It is what it is. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get more in your kitty. We know about the tax net and what is in there. So
that's why we
have to be careful.
That's why we vote for a government, and that's why we have a finance minister. They are supposed to be able to make sure that these nice figures that we have are trickling down into the pockets of the average Ghanaian. So that's the point. And these things just happened. I mean, it's not like we can run away from what happened in 2022. That happened. We had problems with debt servicing. That has also been handled marvelously. Why is that something that nobody is talking about?
Who created the problem with? You say we have problems with debt servicing. Who created the debt servicing problem?
One problem that I have with the way we talk about debt in this country is how, especially our brothers in the NDC, when it suits them, they want to quote in Ghana cedis because of what happened with our
But that's one,
rate.
I think.
But if you
I think the MPP has a history. You don't want to go there.
I don't want to.
Dr. Baumia will give you too much.
I'm talking about today, Ben. I'm talking about exactly today. Because if you look at our debt figures in USD, which is what you borrow in, nobody goes to borrow in Ghana cedis.
Which is true.
Yes, you borrow in USD.
True.
And usually the value of that money doesn't change much. So even though the cedi value of what you borrowed is so much, the value in USD is still about the same. And you look at what the government has been able to do with all of that. All we are saying is that whether it takes some time for these economic factors to show for the average Ghanaian or not, it's still a fact that what we are handing over to this government is better than what we inherited. And we didn't just sit down doing nothing when we inherited that.
That's subjective.
We did better to try and improve things. We've been able to have about 20 billion of our debts essentially forgiven. That is something that nobody even talks about. And I think that's gone a long way to reduce our debt to GDP to now about 60-something. We are on course with all the parameters that the IMF set for us. So not to just tickle ourselves and laugh, but these are real milestones that we set out to achieve, that we have even overachieved in some of them.
Overachieving. You can never say that. I keep saying that no administration has come that you will say has not done something for Ghana. The MPP must be credited. And one of the things I'll never stop talking about is free SHS, though I feel its implementation has been a bit problematic. But if you have done all these things, and even just the minutiae, you saddle us with over $400 million of Agenda 111, which is at precarious levels. We've been here before, so I don't want us to go down.
Yeah, and we could go.
You have the National Cathedral, over 50 million. Do you know what that could have done for Ghana?
58 million.
And just note.
But now we're building a Hajj village.
When we talk about
million, isn't it?
Is it government funding it?
Really?
Where is
are we really going to sit around the table and have this conversation?
Let's do this. Because when the cathedral, for example, we were told that it wasn't going to be sponsored by the state. We stuck to the script until we get to the point where we find out that it is not going that way.
That the government had
exactly. So let the media have that piece. But just a quick point, and then you come in and we move on. All this growth and all of that, it can be both positive and negative. The simple point is Ghanaians want to feel the impact. This NDC administration, the time for talk is running out, and very soon Ghanaians will be clamoring for the very things you promised. It is bottom line.
Sure.
MPP has faced its verdict. Sure. It's you, the NDC now. But just a quick point, when you mentioned borrowing, my mind was averted to it as well. Of course, there's local borrowing, which has also been a problem of the erstwhile administration because you ended up crowding out the private sector to the point where even farmers were not getting enough. Like you go and the banks they find it easier to give to government because it's easy money, easy pickings, instead of, giving to individuals. But then on the other side, you have to understand the banks to some extent because there was a report in recent times that pointed to the fact that some non-performing loans, NPLs, are as high as 81% for some banks.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's 4/5 of what they've given out. Non-performing. People are not paying back. So it's a problematic area. But please, quick thoughts. Your 40 seconds and then I'll come back to you.
You see, sometimes we have to appreciate very little things that bring about great transformation. On the 6th of March, my constituency led by the regional coordinating a council, for instance, we have the MUSEC, and also we have many other stakeholders decided on that day to embark on a cleanup campaign. And that actually resonated very well with the people. And I think that I must, as a leader of the constituency, express my gratitude. Okay. Because one is about to be able to inculcate in the young ones the spirit of keeping our environment clean. I also want to say this by expressing a profound gratitude on an individual I want to single out that has spent his time and energy as a young man called Theo Acheampong. I am telling you, Benjamin, this man can be described as the Erastus, as a donko of our area, who is fighting to keep our environment safe. It is important we recognize such individuals who are doing a lot. Okay. Trust me, I have also had discussions with the coordinating director indicating that if we could replicate this, even on quarterly basis, it will help. Otherwise, we are not conscious about our environment and we are destroying the environment and blaming people, also blaming other people for the ailments.
Time's up. Thank you for those thoughts and we salute this gentleman. But beyond that, Galamsey is still a reality. Even another thing we often don't talk about, sand winning. Sand winning is doing a lot of damage to Ghana. So the NDC should buckle its belt and deal with the situation. Every now and then we hear of incidents here and there and some political actors and a few things. I'm glad the president came out and said no one should call anybody and, you know, talk about some of these things, where Forestry Commission people go into some forest and maybe, I mean, how? Imagine that. In the past, we've had Forestry Commission officials go into a forest and they are beaten to a pulp. That should not continue to happen. Yeah, sure. And if any political actors, past or present, are involved, they should be dealt with. Finito. We don't want stories. Give us a better guide.
That we are prepared to do.
Let's get into the newspapers. Doc, I want to start with you. Let's start with your papers. Today, I want you guys to go so that, because I can run quickly, so you start.
Okay, so the Hawk newspaper. The first photo is of the Chief Justice, jailed for nothing, man locked up for 19 years over Bangle trial. We will look at that in detail later. Government shuts down MPP whoppers. 100 ministers claim rubbished. Borough blow, nothing to show. That's from Haruna. Furniture frenzy, BOG HQ $11 million decor scandal. Fasten seatbelts, Ghana-Canada air deals take flights. And that's on the front page of the Hawk.
Would you like to do some stories from there before we go to the next
I'm thinking the only thing I find really interesting is 19 years of a Bangle trial. And so
So they're jailed for nothing?
Yes, yes.
I mean, I'm definitely interested in that too.
Yes, so let me just try and find out, even though it doesn't say where we can find that.
You can look for it in there.
Ghanaian justice system, yes.
But is that the story? Jailed? Is that the jailed for nothing?
Yes, that had the same photo, so I am assuming that is the same. Okay. Yes, legal black hole swallowing innocent lives. So I'm just going to take it there. Appear and Afoko are not isolated cases. Ghana's prisons are filled with individuals who have been left to rot behind bars for years. Some are waiting trial, others victims of wrongful convictions. Recent reports have revealed that over 30% of inmates in Ghana's prisons are pre-trial detainees, many held far longer than legally permissible. The denial of bail in politically sensitive cases, the lack of legal aid for the poor, and the sheer inefficiency of the justice system has created a justice regime that punishes before proven guilty. So I'm just going to leave it there. I think that's a very serious matter, and I'm hoping that our efforts to undertake the constitutional review will do some of these. But I do believe that it goes beyond the constitutional review. The system itself needs to be overwhelmed. I mean, why are people being denied bails for, as I would see, it's relatively minor offenses? Yeah, so I think we should definitely work on that and to find alternative ways of punishing people.
Alternative resolution
exactly.
When it comes to those areas where you can
because sometimes you see someone has stolen a goat or something and has been sentenced to 15 years. I do understand that theft is theft, but you know, they are definitely nuances.
But here's the thing,
that situation.
You're a medical doctor. Law is my area. The problem, sometimes before some of us read law, you would ignorantly, and the judges are, you see, the judges only operate with what
yes, the guidelines
the laws tell them,
have.
the guidelines they have. If you look at Acts 29 and 30, so if it is not a crime, they can't say it is a crime.
Yes.
And if it is a crime, they can only mete out punishment based on what the law says are the punitive measures that can be enforced.
Yeah.
And so then it's up to the judge to use some level of discretion to say that, okay, maybe in this one, it's minimum of 5 years, maximum of 15 years. And I'm going to give the maximum sentence based on the facts. Or I'm going to give the minimum sentence. You get it. Unless those things change, it is what it is, which is why at a point we had this misdemeanor and other charges when it comes to grafts and some other things change. So for that one, sometimes it becomes complicated. But it is really unfair when you've not done something and it's pinned on you. I remember in the UK, just briefly, there's a story where a gentleman was in the cooler for about, 17 years?
Yeah.
On rape. And there were numerous instances where, the lawyers tried to prove that he was not 17 years. I think for him, they had to peg a maximum of £1 million that they are using as reparation. And there are calls for that to be increased because 17 years of your life, and they are paying him in installments. So I think we need something like that. Some more proactiveness in that regard in Ghana, and damages to be paid.
But sometimes even before you get your verdicts in court, you've been on remand for over 5 years.
5 years.
And That in itself is a sentence. Okay, so let's go to the New Republic.
Well, on this, I was trying to say that besides even just looking at the infrastructure challenges that we have as a country to be able to expedite some of these things.
You mean the courts?
Yes, the courts and even many, for instance, even if you look at what I want to hammer on is the fact that we should try to look at the law and the spirit of the law in itself, where we think that the ordinary person should be protected. For instance, we have some other people where the law is supposed to make them comfortable or give them justice. The law is used as a stampeding block for their own freedom. I live in a rural area, and you could see some of them go through this. For instance, a prosecutor who is supposed to make sure that they protect the ordinary individual, they use that system of court to also make sure that they intimidate and take advantage of people. That's why some of them can even just throw these people in remand and forget about them until somebody somewhere reminds. And that's why, and you realize that this guy, we have Sesu, used to run a pro bono, pro bono for some of these people, and it helps. We think that when the system begins to look at it and save people from this, it will help.
And maybe a final point, since your party has also spoken about a 24-hour economy. I've said this here before. The law is part of the economy. What if, over the weekends, we had a system where there would be active courts working and taking charge of some of the backlog of cases, or whether it is the clerks doing some work, so that when another Monday comes, some of the work that would have been done on Monday, Tuesday has already been done over the weekend. A different set of people who are also employed into the system. Do you get it? Right. So that then look at the land litigation cases we have. So many of them, some of them have been there for donkey years. They are still pending, among others. Look at the Afuku case. Maybe we can accelerate through that. So
perfect. And
24-hour economy, 24-hour
even
courts.
Expanding the court system to the rural areas. For instance, in Tumo, we don't even have a circuit court. If you have a case in Tumo, you have to travel to Wa. That is causing the prosecutors and the police people a big challenge to be able to get a suspects there for trials. So some of these things all impede, and they keep people in Wa, and they don't even remember that some people are kept in remand, waiting to be heard.
Okay. Doc, let's do one more paper, and then we'll do another two from Mohammed before I come in.
Okay, so let's look at the New Republic, which talks about the budget. KCL's budget showdown, betting e-levy, COVID taxes yanked for Mahama reforms. Maslock launches groundbreaking support scheme for female farmers. 2025 budget boldly embraces revenue growth and fiscal prudence. I'm happy they are at least talking about the revenue growth. Ghana must build economic shock absorbers, says Prof. Gachi. We'll look at the budgets from here. Ghanaians are on the edge as finance minister, as finance maestro. That's an interesting term, considering it's been 2 months. Dr. Theo Acheampong gears up to unveil the grand 2025 budget vision today. Yes, so I think it is just talking about the budgets and the taxes that are going to be repealed. And on this, the only thing that I'm very eagerly excited to wait for, I can't wait for it to be done with this so that I can be glued to my TV to decipher everything that comes out of the budget. Because there are going to be revenue shortfalls, definitely. Adding the issue with USAID and all of that. So it's very interesting for me to see how the NDC government is going to go about in plugging these revenue shortfalls. We do hope, we seriously and vehemently hope that there will be no introduction of new taxes. Because what is the point in taking away taxes just to reintroduce new taxes through the back door? That's something that I'm very confident that the people of Ghana would not be happy with, and we would definitely...
But the administration say they would never introduce...
No, we are saying taxes. That. You said you are removing better tax.
It appears you as the MPP are saying you should not. But they are in government and they will determine
they can do whatever.
For example, VAT, they have said that at some point they must increase.
They have over 180 MPs in Parliament. Yes. The fact is, they can approve whatever budgets they present. But I'm telling you, from having a few conversations with people out there, and right now, as a normal Ghanaian who pays taxes, I am not looking forward to removing these taxes, only to introduce some other taxes that are probably going to pinch me more That is what I'm putting out.
When your administration was introducing the betting tax, e-levy, and
see, when we introduced the e-levy and whatnot, it was obvious to everybody that the country was in distress, and we needed to come up with ways to be able to recover. Now that recovery is on course. It was even in our manifesto that we were going to scrap these taxes. However, we did have a plan to be able to overcome the revenue shortfalls. That did not necessarily include, Dr. Bawumia's plan did not necessarily include introducing new taxes. So if you promise the same thing and your approach is to remove these in name and to reintroduce other taxes, personally, I'll not be happy. Because I always tell people that I feel like personally I'm one of the most overtaxed people. So I can't say that because people definitely have more. But I said, looking at my age and my taxes, I'm like, that is too much.
Yes. Right. This is very impressive.
I do think you should have a tax break till you're 35 or something.
Quick one. They are not going according to Dr. Bawumia's.
No.
The NDC's manifesto is
exactly what I'm saying.
Let's move forward.
That's the hope of the people of Ghana. Right. We do not expect you to remove these taxes, only to turn around to bring new ones.
Let's move forward. Mohammed, let me just do something quickly with her. You mentioned the other day the cars and clearing. And what's the status of that?
Nothing has happened so far, Ben.
When you say nothing has happened, what do you mean?
The cars are still at the ports. Yes.
For the medical doctors?
Yes. The cars are still so I'm very happy you are bringing it up so that we can
since you've forgotten,
I'm not forgotten about it at all. We're very glad.
It can be referred to the appropriate quarters for actions to be taken. But like you said, I am sure that the NDC during election 2024 promised Ghanaians something. And that the NDC, led by President John Dramani Mahama, we are committed. I am sure today, once again, the Minister of Finance is coming to fulfill a constitutional imperative, as indicated in Article 179. Clearly, he's coming to lay a statement on behalf of the president. And in that statement, we know Ghanaians will get hope. I've told somebody that, yes, the Ghanaians were very clear in their mind what they wanted before going to the polls. Hence, they did not go to the toad asking for a chair because they know the toad was squatting. They wanted truth, and they will see the truth in John Dramani Mahama. They wanted nothing but what? Hope. And it's the hope now John Dramani Mahama, president, is offering Ghanaians. Clearly, I know that the issues about e-levy, issues about COVID tax will go. She did mention even surveys were conducted regarding that the country is likely to lose about 6.6 billion thereabout. If you pick it cumulatively for 4 years, that will amount to around 28 billion. But that notwithstanding, I think that if we are able to be prudent and physically discipline ourselves, making sure that we strengthen our measures of tax collection, reducing the VAT. Figures indicate that we are able to only get 39% of the targeted amount using the VAT. We are losing up to 61%. If we are able to streamline all this, trust me, the country will still be able to run. We also know, yes, there were instances where...
So summary thoughts, so we can...
Yeah, there were instances where we decided to give tax exemptions on other essential goods and services. But we think that if we are able to look at this and minimize it, we are able to keep a chunk of that money to run our economy. So do not entertain any fear. We are prepared, and we'll make sure that we won't come behind the door giving you tax that you don't want. Ghanaian people know that they will get the truth from NDC. We'll be very candid.
All right, thank you, Mohammed. Yeah. What would you give us from your newspapers?
Well, the Catalyst had very interesting headlines. For instance, we start by saying that Mahama scores high marks. Clearly, everybody knows he started on a good note. And we have Mahama on neighborliness tour of West Africa. He was recently in the Sahelian countries visiting. It is time for lasting peace to prevail. Press Mahama to Boko and other conflict areas. Then we have Daily Guide. It talks about 20...
I want us to... So, the Catalyst, is there any story you're doing from
Yeah, I was looking at... We could look at the Mahama scores high marks.
No surprises that you want to do that story, but let's...
No, clearly, I think that, like I said, we are looking for hope. And Ghanaians want leadership. They want to make sure that somebody who can galvanize all of us to achieve the objective that we set for ourselves. And that is why we think that so far, you can see the participation. It is like an inclusive governance. Just that our brothers and sisters still are a bit reluctant, but I'm sure going forward they will come on board, making sure that together we build the country. On all fronts, talking about making sure that physical discipline measures, we saw what happened during the CIF match, make sure that we're able to cut. We are talking about lean government, where we believe that a lot of waste will be dealt with. We are looking at making sure that he has constantly warned and give signal to his appointees that I am not going to condone. I am not going to condone any wasteful behavior. I'm not going to condone any responsibility or arrogance. Make sure that whatever you do reflect the life of the people. Like he said, I think Doc made a very important point, and you really made that point, indicating that normally we get sometimes excited over figures, which does not translate directly into the lives of people. This is not the time. The president is saying that let's do basic things, like bringing projects, bringing ideas, bringing policies, more in agriculture, in education, and all that will reflect the lives of our people. So I am very excited that President Mahama is on the right course. President Mahama is taking the right step that will change our economy. You go to agriculture sector, now there's an indication that there will be quite an amount of substantial funds allocated to that to be able to run a system that will be able to feed this country. Looking at the agriculture, talking about green development, talking about vegetables, talking about even the poultry side, where we can minimize the import burden that we have over 2 billion on an annual basis. I don't understand why this country that we can throw tomato seeds in the next 3 days when it rains, they germinate, yet we import tomato at the cost of 200 million per year.
Right. So just some quick thoughts. I always, when I have members of government come here, I keep reminding you for good reason. Yeah. One, it's early days yet. Yes. You are just 2 months and a few days old. Sure. You started well as a government on many parameters. In some areas, you can still do a lot more, including Galamsey. Sure. You enjoy a lot of goodwill now.
Yes. Sorry.
The goodwill now is great.
Yes.
You know, Ghanaians are behind you. You just won with over 1.7 million votes. That goodwill is there. It doesn't last forever. You must know that. And just a quick reminder, when in 2017, throughout 2017, especially in early 2017, and the whole talk about, I'll put my presidency on the line to fight Galamsey, Ghanaians supported Nana Akufo-Addo. I mean, he couldn't make a wrong move. He couldn't take a wrong step. You know why? Because he enjoyed the goodwill of all of us. But once things started changing, that is where the devil came in, so to speak, figuratively. So don't tickle yourselves and laugh. There's a whole lot of work to be done. Of course. And the goodwill, as quickly as it comes, can be gone. Just a few words for you. That's it. Let's make tracks.
Benjamin, I'm not disputing that fact. The issue about Galamsey, we know. I think that the Minister of Environment, Science and Technology, Dr. Mohammed, indicated that he has already accepted the challenge and government has already put in place. Talking about repealing LI 2462. And they said that, yes, this thing must be repealed to make sure that we safeguard our forest reserves. And I told somebody that, yes, we have 100% problem. If we agree to be able to divide this thing into subunits of 276 constituencies for us to manage and safeguard our environment, that will be done. I also want to say that the government is committed in not just fighting and shooting people or burning excavators. Right. Government is looking at employing mechanisms or measures that will be able to direct people to do proper mining practices. So that will be done.
All right. Were you going to say something?
On Galamsey, I mean, yes, I will try to be very brief, even though there's so much to be said. Because what the NDC government is now proposing and doing on the matter of Galamsey, number one, is very far from what they promised. They've come into government and they are basically doing the same things that were ongoing before they came in. Operation Halt had been going around seizing machines before they came in. All of these acts of law enforcement have been going on even before they came into government. And so they are not doing anything new. What has changed, however, is how emboldened these illegal miners have become. I saw a video where Erastus and a few people from the anti-Galamsey task force tried to enter a place, and they were confidently stopped by an NDC constituency chairman who was, the first thing I was surprised is he was concerned that he was not told before the operation happened. Then they didn't even leave the matter there. They moved to block the road to prevent access into the community by the Anti-Galamsey Task Force. Nothing has been said about it, and it's just like we are just forgetting about it.
It's not true.
And what I'm saying is that what has been said about it, you have said something.
Some action.
I've not heard anything from the government.
From me.
Okay.
I'm saying
so have you heard anything from President Mahmoud on that matter?
That was in fact, what was being done was he was part of a task force. You just mentioned this. So they went in there, but these people also have tip-offs. In fact, some of the people, there were 3 groups also, and some of them sent a group to come and meet them there. I agree with you, the nefariousness, it didn't start today. But the point is that if a task force is going in there, and these groups even have the intel, they heard of it. But by the way, sometimes they have coconut sellers and all of that, by the way. All these people are giving them intel.
Ben.
I'm saying you're right, but don't create the picture that started.
No, when did you see? No,
but it must be resolved.
No, I understand. But when did you see an MPP constituency organizer having the guts, the hubris, and the impudence to stop people?
Go down
No. When did you see an MPP constituency executive stopping Operation Halt from happening? Before the NDC came into government, there were calls by some members of the NDC to call a state of emergency on this Galamsey issue. What happened to the calls on the state of emergency? Now you have executive authority. Why have you not called the state of emergency?
This paracetamol you are prescribing will not
led by Professor Acheampong, who is now a political appointee, was calling for everybody, every worker in this country to go on strike because they wanted the government to call a state of emergency.
So let me do this.
No, so
we have to move.
All right, where's your state of emergency? That's the only question I have. I'm landing there.
But the whole bit, I mean, people got beaten. I think it was was it Ohiming or Ohiming Teria or Erastus Asari?
Yes,
relax. And people, I mean, the people identified as, your party was so. This was during the MPP late MP. So let's not do that.
I understand. Anybody can. Last year, nobody wanted to hear that. I am a strong proponent of let's do our politics in Galamsey. But the truth is the truth. That time, anybody can say your party was so. But this is an elected.
We just had a minister about 3 weeks ago.
All right, guys.
We had a minister 3 weeks ago.
One person talking at a time.
Yes, okay.
So, Doc, you've spoken for quite a bit. Quick response. Let's do the daily guide. We have to go.
So what I'm simply saying is that,
and simply make it simple.
Yes, government is just setting up. We have the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa, taking all the bold steps, making sure that we don't just use physics. We also use brains to make sure that we deal with some of these challenges.
All right.
Stakeholders meeting have been called. For the first time, MPs have been invited to a conference where we were all.
Sorry.
MPs have been invited to a conference where we were all put in the loop to understand the exigency of this situation, said that we can all get up and help work in our various constituencies to get this menace halted. So don't make it look as if it's a kind of no hope.
Let's do the daily guide quickly, and then I'll come in with my papers on where.
Well, the daily guide, we have a 2025 budget, e-levy, COVID, tax to go. Then we have JB Donkwa killer bail, hiring moved to March 2025. 4 killed in Gori accident, a crash rather. We have China Fujian fishing calls for enhanced security. Then we have NIB releases Gifty Oware, Mensa.
All right. Would you like to do any?
Yeah, I want to look at issues about road accidents.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that.
But give us a snippet of the story. Give us a little bit from the story.
Okay.
Doc, you have one paper left, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Mohammed.
You can go.
They say 4 people, including 3 males and 1 female, have been confirmed dead in a Gori road accident, which occurred at Infancy near Kumasi in the Ashanti region. Accident reportedly occurred when a Ford transit bus from Kumasi to Doma, Ahinkro, veered off its lane after developing a tire burst to crash head-on with a man diesel tipper truck. The Abuakwa Divisional Police report, which confirmed the Gori crash, disclosed that several other people, especially in the Ford transit bus, also sustained severe body injuries and have been hospitalized. So clearly talks about the road candy that we've been experiencing. And I think that is becoming one too many. Besides the normal ailments that we know, and we think that accidents of such nature should be looked at clearly, and all measures should be put in place, making sure that our roads are safe to fly. Because I believe that people should take responsibility. For instance, drivers who are moving people from one point to the other should understand that these people have given their lives to them to be able to take them to their point of destination. When you are on the road, you should be able to restrain yourself and adhere to all road safety measures to make sure that you get to your destination very nicely. Also, I think that we have a lot of policemen on the road. They should be able to make sure that they check on these vehicles, making sure that vehicles are of road-weighty nature before they ply on this road. So to me, I think that it is something as a nation we have to look at and make sure that we advise, and also we make sure that we take measures that will be able to put the right people on the road to steer our passengers or individuals to their destinations.
All right. Thank you very much for those thoughts. Let's get into my stack of papers very quickly. The Ghanaian Times, public expectations from 2025 budget. Reduce taxes, cost of living, create employment. Public urges government. Then there's also government operation cracks down on illegal miners, confiscates 9 excavators, bulldozer, arrests 4 persons. Let's uphold principles of Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Minority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin says so. Oblimpong, Dr. Weche Kojo II is Paramount Chief of English Alata, President of Traditional Council. That's the GARHC saying that. On the back page, Qatar Charity inaugurates a refurbished 37 military hospital mosque. Ghana Water MD inspects treatment plans to address production shortfalls. Those details in there. Let me just take a swipe at a few of them. So, Doc, you were talking about Galamsey. Let me see what's happening here. A joint operation by the Rapid Response Unit of the Forestry Commission and personnel of the Ghana Armed Forces has led to the seizure of 9 excavators, 1 bulldozer, and the arrest of 4 persons suspected to be illegal miners. A source has disclosed to the Ghanaian Times. The operation was undertaken by the RRU of the Commission and 30 military men in compartments 17 and 20 in the Tano Area Forest Reserve in the Enchi Forest District of the Western North region. So that story there. As for the expectations of the Ghanaian people, I don't want to go into that. We've already looked at it. Professor Enim, the government statistician, says economy grows 5.7%. Ghana's economy, including oil and gas, provisional results grew by 5.7% in 2024 compared to 3.1% in the previous year. Then there's page 9, very quickly. So page 9. Let's uphold principles of Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Minority Leader. Minority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin has entreated Ghanaians to uphold the principles of the late Dr. Joseph Boakye Dankwa, a leading founder of the United Gold Coast Convention for National Unity and Development. According to him, those principles for which J.B. Dankwa fought and suffered persecution at the hands of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, holds the country together today. It's interesting because I saw a post by the Daily Graphic referencing what the Ochenhene had said, and the comments underneath were pretty interesting. When it comes to Nkrumah and J.B. Dankwa, I always say this: we can't pick and choose. If you look at the NPP or the UP tradition, they would want to pick J.B. Dankwa over everybody else. If you look at the socialist or the other dispensation, including the NDC, they want to pick Nkrumah over everybody else. If you want to pick them, pick both the good and the bad. So if you want to pick Dr. Nkrumah, don't also forget, yes, some actions were taken, the bombing in Kulungugu and the rest, the paranoia, the Preventive Detention Act, and all of those things. You must add that because the good and the bad together. If you pick J.B. Dankwa, you must also pick the good and the bad, the results of whatever collusions may have been made when people were saying independence now in the shortest possible time, and others were saying independence now. What that meant, was it because they were not elite? I mean, the links with purportedly CIA. We must investigate all of that, interrogate them. That is what we must do when it comes to these figures, and not pick and choose what is good and what is not. Economy Times, I'll just leave you with headlines. Bank of Ghana starts sweeping policy reforms. 2025 budget, tax policies dominate discussions. An economist says T-bill rates decline could disincentivize commercial banks. On the back page, strong financial buffers could end Ghana's IMF cyclical dependence. That's according to economist Professor John Gachi. Lady, gentlemen, 30 seconds. We have to go. I'll start with you this time, Mohammed.
Okay. On what topic do you want us to talk on?
Anything, but 30 seconds.
Okay, sure. Clearly, I think, like you said, the stories about Ghana still is like close to 60, 80 years. Yes, we are still trying to define the founders and who contributed what at any point in time. Like, I do agree with you clearly that, yes, in telling these stories, we should be very holistic and honest. If we are taking Nkrumah's contribution to this country called Ghana, can never be overemphasized. Okay. I am sure there might be issues that happened in 64 that led to some other actions. Okay. But I'm telling you that you cannot sweep under the carpet.
His point's made. Doc, we have to go. Quick thoughts.
Okay, so again, for me, it's still the matter of Galamsey, because it was one of the reasons, it was one of the key issues going into the election. So not to suggest me, but I'm sure there are lots of Ghanaians that are just sitting at home, shaking their heads at the actions of the government right now. First, I've not seen them institute a single new policy. I heard them talk about an alternative livelihood program, which we all know is something that has been going on. Using law enforcement to fight Galamsey, something that has been going on unsuccessfully. Okay. So where are the brand new ideas they promised? If they've run out of ideas, we are more than open and welcome to discuss Dr. Bawumia's plans for Galamsey.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, lady and gentlemen. Mohamed Bataglia is Member of Parliament, Sisala East. We also have Dr. Acheampong. She is with the MPP's Communications Directorate. Both of them joined this conversation, I should say. Later, I'll be telling you about that solar system that you need for your homes, but that will be after sports. Do stay.
Time now to bring you sports here on the AM show with me, Muftahu Nabila Abdullahi. Black Stars assistant coach Desmond Ofer, who also doubles as the head coach of Ghana's under-20 national team, says combining his role as assistant to Otto Addo and leading the technical team of the under-20 national team is not a big deal at all. Speaking to the Ghana Football Association media team, he says that the under-20 tournament would be happening at a time where the FIFA window would not be activated. Hence, he believes that he's in a better position to combine the two roles and contribute to the development of football and the various national teams.
Well, luckily, it doesn't clash at all because the tournaments with the under-20s doesn't fall in the FIFA window. Apart from that, we really have a really top technical team with under 20, so it's quite positive, and yeah, it's easy to combine. No, I think my role is quite simple. My role is to assist the head coach as as best as I can. So for me, it's about hard work and supporting him any level as possible, and any areas that we feel like we need to improve on. So yeah, from my side, it's just hard work and helping the head coach as best as I can. As we all know, it was a very painful moment for us not to qualify for the AFCON this year in Morocco. But we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot from the mistakes on and off the pitch, and we feel like we are very hungry to try and rectify the situation. And once again, it's through hard work and through working together. And yeah, so we are willing to work really hard to rectify those mistakes. First and foremost, I think we have to look at ourselves first, because we have enough quality in the squad to make sure that we perform on the day. Yes, of course, we want to also make the Ghanaian fans very proud of us. So it's very important that we give a really good performance against Chad at home. We're going to fight, and it's going to be a final. So for us, I think it's very important to make sure that this window is wrapped up very positive, and make sure that the Ghanaian fans are very well and very happy with us. Yeah. We have to look at our own strengths. Now, both teams, which is Chad and Madagascar, both have new coaches. So we don't know how they're going to set up. We know the players, of course, but it's about us and how we get the boys ready to fight and make sure they give everything on the day.
Now let's take you to Bolga, where the Theo Acheampong Technical Center in Winkogo is near completion. The facility, which was started about 5 years ago, according to the Regional Football Association chairman of the Upper East, Mr. Zida, the facility is almost complete and it will serve the needs of the people within the area.
The Upper East has the potential to produce a lot more super talents and perhaps a lot more of Abedi Ayew Pele's if and only if we support our youth with first-class footballing infrastructure.
And this technical center which we have built, I'll be glad and propose that we should call it Theo Acheampong Winkogo Technical Center for Excellence and Development. We are hanging his name on it with Winkogo so that we know that there is something here in Winkogo.
You are welcome to Upper East Region, Winkogo to be precise, Theo Acheampong Technical Center. The essence of this technical center is to develop football talents within the 5 northern regions. And this happened to be the first project of phase 1, should I say, through the FIFA 1.0 that has come with the external walling, the pitch, that's the football field itself, which goes along with the floor lighting, and at the same time the irrigation, and that has been the first stage of it. The second phase have seen the erection of a dressing room that is solely funded by the GFA. Is almost complete. The project intends to have the addition about 2 additional fields, maybe probably 1 artificial and 1 grass. That will also come along with a 30 hostel facility to enable us the hosting some of the junior national teams during camping.
The Theo Acheampong Technical Center is one of a big relief to the people of Upper East and Mother Ghana. I say Mother Ghana because RTU have benefited this pitch before. By virtue of coming to play Tilly Awari Stars, the season just passed in an FA Cup fixture here. And so after playing, the feeling they had, chatting with them, they told us that if there was a way, they would have loved to adopt the Theo Acheampong Technical Center to Winkogo as their home venue because of how beautiful the edifice is and how comfortable it is for you to play football there.
This facility happens to be the best facility that we have in this region because Upper East, in terms of football infrastructure, we are lacking behind.
Just a park, a standard. Me na me ma hada. But the first day I'm here, the builder, because it's one of the best parks so far.
As a community member and a coach of the community team, since we have started Cones up to Division 2, we've never had a pitch like this one.
And for the people of Upper East, as you can see today for yourself, series of games are already ongoing. This morning, the academy boys had their turn. The ladies, the academy girls will also be playing their league match. Right after that, we'll be having Division 2 league match. First match will kick off at exactly 2 p.m. There'll be a second match at 4 p.m. And it goes on. There are weeks that you see that virtually from morning to evening because we have beautiful floor lights, standardized, that when you are playing as if you are playing in daytime.
UEFA Champions League makes a return tonight. Let's take a look at the fixtures. PSG, they will be traveling to Anfield to face Liverpool. Liverpool won the first leg by 1-0. And also Barcelona, they also won the first leg by 1-0. They'll be coming up against Benfica at home. There's Inter Milan, who won their first leg 2-0 against Feyenoord, and they also have an advantage heading into the second leg. Bayern Munich will play Bayer Leverkusen. First leg advantage goes to Bayern Munich. They won that tie by 3-0. Now let's hear from the manager of Liverpool, Arne Slot. He's been speaking ahead of the game against PSG later tonight. And this is how we'll be wrapping up AM Sports here with me, Muftaru Nabila Abdullah. Arne Slot is a preview to the game against PSG later tonight.
Welcome back on the AM show. I'll be engaging the past students of St. Augustine's College shortly. But before we go there, have you contemplated solar technology? Select a solar system from our various solar packages ranging from 30,000 to 90,000 Ghana cedis. Just find out. You'll know that all our solar systems come with lithium-ion batteries. And you can get a solar water heater, a solar home system, a solar powered station, or a solar generator ranging from 1,000 to 20,000 watts. We also sell reverse osmosis machines for water treatment. All you have to do now is look for us. Who are we? SolarMate Ghana. And you'll find us both on Facebook and Instagram. To contact SolarMate, you can call us on 0508 320 470. SolarMate Ghana is located at Adrigano, East Legon. SolarMate, we go everywhere. And it's Ogasco at 95. Joining the conversation this morning, we have Kofi Akulache, he's president of the group, and of course, Herman Eduse, lead business committee. They both joined the conversation. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ben.
You're looking green, different shades of green. You're on transport here.
Yeah, we be sustainable people, so.
I'm just feeling absolute. Maybe you should have been leading the fight against Galamsey here.
No.
Reforestation and all of that, because your colors are green, all shades of green.
And I think we do our own in our own corner too.
In your own corner.
Yes, and I mean, just on Galamsey, you'd know that Kenashigbe is one of the
indeed,
on that,
indeed.
and he's
Dr.
an Apsu, and he's an Apsu, a very proud one too. Yes.
All right. So let me start with Kofi on this bit. What are we doing? Apsu at 95. So you are president
of Apsu 2000. I'm convener of
Apsu 2000.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
After this segment, I'll give you a little knock.
We've had that conversation already.
We've had that conversation. All right. So Apsu 2000 president, and this is your 25th anniversary. I know a lot of schools in your 25th year after graduating, you do something, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So what's the agenda?
Right. So basically, like you mentioned, we are from the #1 Beulah Road, Cape Coast. I mean, some of you like to call us the Green College. Others want to call us the Resource College for obvious reasons. But yes, we are the last from St. Augustine's College. And then 95 years ago, it dawned on the heart of the Catholic faithfuls to set up the very first Catholic institution in Ghana. I'm excited to tell you that 95 years on, St. Augustine's has become the crown jewel of education in Ghana. And I know with you boys are Presecans and all that who hate this, but I mean, this is a resting claim. So yes, so we are here to start the marking of this milestone of an anniversary.
I see. And for you, Herman, I mean, 25 years on, what has it been like? And what do you think this call is after a quarter of a century to go back to school and do something?
Yeah, so for us, it's a clarion call to go back and give back to the school who we usually thought made us. I mean, for most of us, what we've become today is as a result of the kind of foundation we had from St. Augustine's College. With our motto being perseverance conquers all, you can imagine how much we've persevered to ensure that we are able to rise above all the odds that life threw at us and have been achievers in our own rights in whatever we do. And to highlight this kind of giving back is why we chose the kind of legacy project we are delivering to the school. I mean, it's not easy, especially coming from, from an election period where money was hard to come by with all the economic issues, to raise over 6 million Ghana cedis to be able to deliver a legacy project, which is befitting of 25 years out of school and a 95-year celebration. So to give back is something we are really proud of to do this time around, and that will be one of the highlights of the events coming weekend.
What exactly, Kofi, let me come back to you. What exactly are you doing this time round? What are you hoping to, at the end of this sequence of days, to have achieved for your alma mater?
Okay, so per our school's convention, like Herman said, the highlight of usually the school's anniversary is unveiling of a legacy project. So once you're given that enormous responsibility to, host the anniversary of the school, you need to come through with some special legacy project. So for us, we converted an old, science lab into a state-of-the-art science center. It comes up with 3 labs, 1 state-of-the-art lecture theater, and then 1 robotics and AI center. So for the 3 labs, they are a chemistry lab, I don't know if you have the pictures to show, but well, if you don't, there's a physics lab as well, and then there's an integrated science lab. So like you said, this is the highlight of our celebrations, and then we will actually, show the world on Saturday what ABSU 2000 had to offer, to St. Augustine's College.
Herman, what do you think the impact of this will be?
Well,
this legacy project.
Yes,
what do you think the impact?
So in this dispensation of STEM education and all the AI and robotics, it's important that you create the right kind of environment for learning for students. And for us, that is exactly what we are trying to do. And it actually fits right into the kind of theme we chose, which is leveraging innovation towards economic and social sustainability for the next generation. So this is supposed to form a bedrock for the kind of foundation we want to develop our kids into, going into a future of robotics, into a future of science and technology as we have it. So this is supposed to create that kind of enablement for the kids to have an impactful future in that sphere.
All right. So, Kofi, start walking us through the program from tomorrow.
Right.
You actually have a number of things coming up all the way to the 17th and then to the 31st of March, where there will be the post-speech day celebration. Just walk us through what exactly is going to be.
Right, so Herman is head of business.
So I'll do that.
Okay.
So we actually start off on the 12th with a lecture by one of our very own Professor Sam Enoch of the University of Education, Winneba. And then we continue on Thursday. We are painting Cape Coast green with a float through the principal streets of Cape Coast. And that is powered by Piva drinks. And then we also have a bonfire and torchlight procession in the night on Thursday, where we would also take the opportunity to remember our fallen comrades and to celebrate them as well. On the 14th, we give back to the township of Cape Coast with a medical outreach, medical screening. So we would invite all of them to come, and then we attend to them medically. There is also games and sports with the students, as well as our annual congress. This is one of the highlights for ABSU on the national level, where we have the annual congress and then have a meeting of all ABSUnians in that regard. On the 15th is the highlight of the celebrations, which is the 95th speech and prize giving day, and then the unveiling of our very enviable legacy project as we have it. And then on the 16th, under the esteemed patronage of the Most Reverend Charles Palmer Bako, we'll have the Pontifical High Mass at the school to celebrate and give thanks to God for all what He's been able to deliver for us. Yes. So basically, that's what we'll be running through for this week.
Okay. Yes. So those are the activities you're going to be engaging in. It reminds me of speech and prize giving day back in the day. Always exciting.
Very exciting.
The intellectual competition and who overcame whom to get what. But for you, what will be the highlight for you?
Well, it still remains the unveiling of the legacy project, and I'd use this platform to leverage and then thank some of our sponsors for. Icon Energy had been very, very heavy for us. They had come through to support us so much. They are the headline sponsors of the 95th anniversary. And then there are others that I think Herman...
Yeah, so there's JK Industries. All our branding, our prints, they've held us down and been able to and like I mentioned, Piva Drinks, the CEO is actually chairman of the occasion, Mr. Frank J. Mensah. So he would also be there to give us full support on the day. And I must add that aside from this legacy project we are doing, we have actually gone beyond what we chose as our legacy project to also renovate all the washrooms in the 12 houses of the school and to also deliver 4 boreholes to the school to improve their standard. Like I mentioned, we are a people of sustainability. So at any point in time, we try to do things that would help to sustain education and to also further, I mean, the good things for the school.
Right. So good job you guys are doing. Fantastic. In fact, raising about 6 million Ghana cedis. No mean feat. And we can only wish you the very best. Any final words?
Right. So, yes. So this is a clarion call to all Absonians. I mean, the general public. It's going to be green in Cape Coast this weekend. I mean, you don't want to miss this. It's Ghana month, so we are fixing in a few things in there to make it a bit localized for some of our diaspora colleagues who are also coming through.
I guess there's green Ghana and then there's green Cape Coast.
Yes. There's green Ogasco.
Green Ogasco.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to extend thanks to our national executive. They've been quite supportive. And also to congratulate our year group for what we've been able to achieve. I know it's not been easy. I mean, we've had our own ups and downs, but they've come through and there's a time for us to celebrate. So we call on all of them to actually be a part and parcel of this so that together we can bring it up.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning. And all roads lead to St. Augustine's College. And we have to congratulate the 2000-year group and the great things they are doing. Those who joined the conversation, we have Kofi Akolache. He's president of the 2000-year group. And we also have Herman Aduse, lead of the business committee. They together spearheading this great feat. 95 years. No be a joke. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Anyway, so do stick and stay with us. We have a bit more action we'll be bringing your way. And of course, we're also gearing up for heading to Parliament for that first budget statement of the NDC administration, the government and what it has to give us. Are these taxes going to be scrapped? Betting tax, the e-levy, COVID-19 levy, among others. And will there be the introduction of any new taxes? What happens to VAT? People want to hear about all of these. There are thoughts that school feeding will see an increment from 1 cedi 50 pesos to 2 cedis. We'll be expanding on all of these with our guests right here in the studio. You don't want to miss a beat. We'll be right back. Welcome back on the AM show. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, Ghana, let's talk water tanks. Do you know the secret to real water storage? It's simple. If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it's not the correct tank. That's right, the tortoise tank, Syntex tank, is the champion of water tanks. It is strong and durable and built to handle our Ghanaian weather, rain or shine. Syntex tank has your back. So my people, go outside, check your tank. Go and look. And if it doesn't have a tortoise on it, it's time to upgrade. Join the Syntex tank family today and enjoy water storage that's tough like a tortoise. All you have to do now, pick up your phone and call that number. Well, Syntex tank, are strong, are tough. I'll give you that number later. But for now, we're joined by our guests joining the conversation as we interact ahead of the budget statement. Abdul Tia Kabiru is Member of Parliament for Wale Wale. We also have Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Both of them join the conversation. Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure having you join the conversation. I will start with you, Dr. Jabir Mohammed. Of course, here we are today. It's the first budget statement of this administration. The expectations are high. There are thoughts on a number of taxes. There are thoughts on VAT. There are thoughts on increments when it comes to school feeding. So many things to contemplate. But For you, what are some of the things, ab initio, you would like to talk about? Things that you are hoping to see today in Parliament as Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson, the Finance Minister, delivers the first budget of this administration?
All right. Thank you for having me and for having us.
Right.
Good morning to you and good morning to all our listeners. In fact, a lot of things come to mind when we talk about budget. This is the first budget reading of the government. And we anticipate to see a lot of reforms and a lot of changes in the budget. More particularly, as you speak right now, you just spoke about taxes. The taxes are just unbearable. If you buy an item if you buy an item in any of the shops, you will notice that a greater component of the list of things that you have to pay for it constitutes significant tax burdens on businesses and individuals. Particularly, yesterday I bought an item, and frankly speaking, the item was like 7,000 Ghana cedis, and the tax component on it alone was 900 and something Ghana cedis. And this is actually pushing up the cost of living, because if you are paying close to 22% of tax on a single item, you can imagine how much money you pay to government, specifically for taxes component only. So I do anticipate that some of these taxes should be rationalized, especially the VAT, the COVID levy, the decoupling of the GET fund and that of the National Health Insurance Scheme. I do hope that even though we are anticipating that we take away the COVID levy, but I think that, in my candid opinion, we should realign that and put that into a national emergency health fund. We should have a national emergency health fund where we can put the COVID levy in. We should not entirely scrap it, because if you do so, in recent times, we have been talking about the fact that we have to clearly examine and look at a component where we can have funding, a dedicated funding for people with kidney disease and all of that. If you are able to reallocate the COVID levy and put it into a national health emergency fund, I believe that we can find a dedicated source of funding for it, even though it will still increase the tax net. But I do hope that if we bring back the VAT to, let's say, 12.5% as it used to be, I don't think we will unnecessarily burden businesses and individuals. Another point I think we have to look at is expenditure rationalization. Let's rationalize our expenditure. Let us ensure that we don't unnecessarily increase government expenditure, especially putting the money into areas where it's not going to generate enough revenue to be able to repay back the excruciating debt situation that we find ourselves in today. Government should be able to invest in areas where the government is able to generate enough revenue to be able to pay back most of the debt component that we own in recent times.
Thank you for those
element, I think.
Doc, yeah. We have to be very brief, incisive. So, I mean, the points, we'll get to them eventually, but let's be very incisive. You can go on to the next point and maybe wrap with that.
All right. So the big push, I expect to see more money pushed there. They said they want to spend 10 billion in 4 years. So I expect to see a quarter of it, 25% of it being pushed in this time. And also, I think that we need to also look at our fiscal regimes in the oil sector, our fiscal regimes in the mining sector. I think that most of the fiscal regimes that we have has become so archaic, and we are not reaping the benefit that we are supposed to get out of it. So let's look at our fiscal regimes and begin to generate something tangible out of it. Another important element is the 24-hour economy. What are the strategies? What are the measures? What do government have to put in place to ensure that the 24-hour economy is working and working efficiently? So government have to be bold enough and communicate to us the way and manner in which they want to undergo the 24-hour economy. It's very, very essential to us, because that was their main flagship program that won them the election. So I expect to see detailed outline, detailed programs on the 24-hour economy, especially right now. I keep talking. As I sit today, I have light out. How can you run a 24-hour economy without proper electricity? So that comes to mind. So we have to also invest in the energy sector, ensure that we have all the needed activities. So I want to see concrete measures that they want to do so that they can keep the lights on. That is very critical. Are they ready to pay off the debt of $2.2 billion currently outstanding, which is equivalent to about, I remember the minister was saying that it's about 80 billion Ghana cedis. What are the measures are they going to pay it? Are they going to allocate some funds to be able to carry out that one?
Right.
And a host of others. As we debate, I'll keep bringing them up. So I want to at least push the baton to my brother to also come in.
Dr. Mahama, it's your turn now. I don't know what your thoughts are on these matters, but of course, you will also have your own expectations. What are they?
Also, again, good morning to your cherished listeners. First and foremost, the Ghanaian people were disappointed in the new Patriotic Party governors, and that was the reason why they voted for the NDC to come to power. And having been voted to power, the expectation is that they give the Ghanaian people hope. So my expectation of the budget is that it should address the hope, the aspiration, the needs and concerns, the everyday challenges of the Ghanaian people. My expectations are that they campaign on the back of certain goals, certain deliverables, certain promises, certain pact they made with the good people of Ghana, i.e. jobs, 24-hour economy has one job is going to be done by three persons. They campaign on the fact that Galamsey was an issue. They campaigned on the fact that they want to sustain the free senior high school education. They wanted to make cost of living bearable and to reduce it to the barest minimum for the Ghanaian people. These are the things I think that they have to find expression in the 2025 budget. And largely, my expectations are aligned to the expectations of the good people of Ghana, and to seeing how the minister responsible for finance would articulate the views, the concerns, the aspiration of the Ghanaian people, and having them find expression in the 2025 budget.
And so those are your brief thoughts. We'll have other guests join the conversation as we go along. But on the bit about expenditure, Dr. Mahama, especially considering the debt that we have to deal with and the claims about expenditure, the expenses of the erstwhile administration, what would be your expectations in that regard?
Well, so I think that the government has made a lot of propaganda about government expenditure, especially on the debt, how that has accumulated to the debt burden of our country. And the government will now have to come clean with the numbers, because the president had also hinted that the scar, the depth of the problem that we have, we are sunk into, is far more than we had anticipated. Today is a day of reckoning for the finance minister to come out with the numbers to satisfy the Ghanaian people or to justify the position they have long held. But you see, numbers, I've always argued, don't lie. And these numbers will have to be verifiable. These numbers will have to be tenable in a manner that will allow everyone to go along with. So I expect the finance minister to give us concretely and verify data on our debt standing, whether in the energy sector, whether in the road sector, whether in the, goods and services sector, and even if there are compensation or arrears outstanding, the finance minister will have to know that. I also expect the finance minister to, provide with the good people of Ghana how they will want to rationalize, in their words, the expenditure, those they consider as frivolous or, if you like, irrational expenditure, how they are going to rationalize that and make the expenditure aligned to the government economic and fiscal policy. So these are expected, but the issue about the debt is also because the country is measured as a percentage of the growth of the country. And yesterday, the Ghana Statistical Service came out with the new, value of our economy. And our economy is now valued at 1.2 trillion. And that essentially means that our debt to GDP has reduced from the 72% to 61.8%. So that is our debt burden, and that is our debt stock as at the time the NDC was taken over. But that said, we would always go on convenient, we always want to go into the absolute numbers, but not measuring it against the size of the economy. But I want the finance minister to come clear now that to tell the good people of Ghana the real debt to GDP ratio, or the real debt, if you like, burden on the Ghanaian economy. And today, like I said, is a day for accountability, not just to, tell us what you want to do, but to give a fair, balanced, and honest account of what has transpired over the last 24 months for the year closing 2024.
Let me ask you, especially as there has been talk from your minority spokesperson on the economy, that the finance minister should be truthful and that there should be no new taxes. Even before the SONA delivered by the president himself, there was talk about, be truthful and all of that. What is the truth? You talk about the real debt to GDP ratio, for example. What is it? From where you sit, what is the real debt to GDP ratio?
The real debt to GDP is 61.8%, as presented by the Ghana Statistical Service yesterday. That is the real value of debt to GDP. And I don't think there's going to be any other figure rather than what the government statistician has presented, and there should not be any figure to that effect. We argue that there should not be new taxes because the Ghanaian people were told that taxes we are imposing nuisance taxes, and the taxes are a burden to the Ghanaian people, and that when the NDC comes to power, they would do away with the taxes. They mentioned 4 taxes: emission taxes, e-levy, COVID-19 tax, and betting tax. These taxes, the rational expectation of every Ghanaian is that they would go. But you see, there is this tendency of government saying that we are going to reduce their burden, but you end up putting more taxes on the people. For instance, they talk about reviewing VAT. If we find in the budget that there's a restoration of some VAT handles that the previous government abolished, then you are basically shortchanging the good people of Ghana, because we know that real estate taxes or VAT on real estate was abolished by the previous government. If I read the budget and I find out that there's a reintroduction of real estate taxes, I will find it to be disingenuous to the Ghana, good people of Ghana. I also know that there was no tax on non-life insurance policies. Now, if I read the budget and I see that there are now taxes or VAT on non-life insurance activity, I'll find it to be shortchanging the good people of Ghana, because the government did that, removing those taxes, and you are coming back to impose those taxes again. I also know that, for instance, growth and sustainability levy, with the sunset clause was around 2025, whether or not the government would, because they have always argued that some of these taxes have sunset clauses, whether they are going to abide by their sunset clauses or extend them. If the government is extending those particular taxes, well, it means that the government believes that those taxes were necessary. But I don't want to see an increase in the values of those taxes. And if at the end of the day, I see and I read and I hear that these taxes have been increased, or there have been review of VAT to include some taxation that were abolished by the previous government, then the good people of Ghana will be the best judges in that regard.
All right. Before I go back to Dr. Mohammed, just interesting thoughts. Property taxes were looked at in your administration, and you talk about the tendency of governments to review taxes, some of which you did yourself. Wouldn't you say that what's good for the goose is good for the gander? Because all of a sudden, once the erstwhile administration is no longer in power, it's all about, don't do this, don't increase taxes, don't touch this. On the other hand, you say, we want to see how they will raise funds, especially as they have promised to do away with the betting tax, the e-levy, the COVID-19 levy. And you talk about sunset clauses for some of these. Indeed, but looking at the logic of sunset clauses and, levies or taxes that should have been phased out, COVID-19, from what we had been told from the inception, was supposed to be there for just a brief period till today. We'll still have the COVID-19 levy. How many years after COVID-19? What do you think? Are you being fair in your analysis? Just quick thoughts,
Yeah, so
and I'll go back to Dr.
there are
Mohammed.
certain fundamental principles. For instance, we also promised in our manifesto that e-levy was going to go. If the government is removing e-levy, it aligns. Two, we believe that property taxes or property rates were supposed to be paid, and that we had what we call a modified system, where there was even a system put in place to ensure the implementation, but for the non-alignment between the Ghana Revenue Authority and the local government ministry, that particular taxes would have gone. If the government is considering it, I would personally, in the spirit of being principled, would support such a tax measure, because we believe that that is a window for us to get more revenue into the account. So on that, we will agree. But you see, you have to determine the demeanor of the NDC in respect of those taxes, because their demeanor was what gave them the mandate, right? So if the government demeanor against some of those things were to the effect that they are not good for the good people of Ghana, and the Ghanaian people believe and agree with them, it is only good that even though in principle you feel it's good, but because of their position earlier, you want them to go with the position of the Ghanaian people. It has nothing to do with us doing something in the contrary, but because the Ghanaian people believe their story, and that story was to the effect that this tax was not good, then it's better not be good, because you cannot punish a government for having the mind to introduce such a tax. Then you say it was not good, the Ghanaian people agree with you, then you come back and visit them with the same tax. That is the only concern we have. But like I said, in principle, property tax, I think is okay, because we wanted to do it, and if they are going to do it, it's okay in principle. Whether the Ghanaian people think it's good, that is for them, against their words they had mentioned, and the rest.
Dr. Mohammed, an economy that is now worth some 1.2 trillion Ghana cedis and a real debt to GDP ratio of about 61% as per Dr. Kabiru Mohammed and as per the government statistician. What does that mean for our economy? And if you have any responses to what Dr. Mohammed has said, you can also come through with them.
Well, thanks so much. I maintain that I think that the real estate taxes were eliminated because we wanted to ensure that we boost up activities in that sector. So if now the sector is much more matured, and the government believes that bringing back the taxes on that area will help them to rake in more revenue, so that they can deface, or they will be able to reduce the debt burden. I do hope that that is a good step in the right direction. I don't think that, you see, right now people are selling houses at a very high rate, $200,000, $300,000, and you think that they should make away that income and go away without being taxed. I don't think that is right, because any other businesses are being taxed. So if the real estate sector is now going to be taxed, I think that is a step in the right direction. The government should bring that back and ensure that we rake in more revenue and maintain sanity. Especially most Ghanaians build their own houses. That is, most of those people don't even put up houses to sell to the ordinary workers of government who pay their daily taxes. They sell it to the politicians, they sell it to the big people. So they should be taxed when they rake in those revenue. I don't agree that such taxes should be kept out of the tax bracket. Another point is that, well, the economy has just grown in nominal terms. But in real terms, how has the economy grown? Is it that the growth in nominal terms is going to bring in about real sector growth? If that is so, it means that jobs are going to be created. I think that it is always good for the government to rebase the economy at any point in time, so that we can expand economic activities and bring down our debt burdens.
You economists, just a quick one. You economists often talk about rebasing the economy. With where we are now, what would a rebasing of the economy mean, really? Just break it down for our viewers. Break it down. What would rebasing the economy mean?
Rebasing of the economy simply means adding other activities that were outside the computation of the GDP.
Like
so
what?
If, for instance, media work was not added to the computation of the GDP, and currently you add the media work to the computation of the GDP, you have rebased the economy. Another point is that you also change the base year. So if the base year was to be somewhere, let's say 2020, 2019, maybe you bring the base year back to, let's say, 2022, because in 2022, prices of goods and services increased astronomically. So if you are using a 2022 year as a base year, then that also makes sense because it takes care of the inflationary tendencies that you were experiencing. But if you are still using 2019 prices to calculate the real state of the economy, it means that you are ironing out the effect of the the higher inflation that we had in 2022. So if you bring back the base year to 2022, then it means that you are going to increase the base of the economy. So these are the two angles by which you can use to rebase your economy.
So if we were rebasing our economy now, those are the areas you would want us to look at?
Yeah, so these are the two areas that we'll be looking at. But there are other areas that I think that the government and the Ghana Statistical Service can see if they think that those areas can also help to increase the base of the economy, then they can also do so. And like my brother said, when you do that, you are able to expand your economy and you reduce the burden of taxes that. So if you do that, your base will increase and your nominal term, which is the GDP, which is the debt that you have. If you have 721 billion, now you have close to, let's say, $1.2 trillion. It means that it's going to reduce the size of your debt to GDP ratio, and that gives you the angle to be able to give you a fiscal space for you to be able to borrow if you have to do so.
Now, the government has spoken about its big push, $10 billion involved. You made mention of it in your earlier submission. How do you think, realistically, this government, with the debt constraints and payments that will start from what, 2026, thereabouts, even from 2025, commitments to expectations on the economy itself, how do you think this can be made feasible, starting with this budget?
Yeah, well, the big push is about infrastructure development. And every country is more interested in expanding its infrastructure because if you expand your infrastructure, it's going to give you the ability to expand your economy in the long run. So even though we have a high debt burden, like we said, rebasing the economy gives you the ample opportunity to be able to give you a high envelope to borrow. And it means that when they are now borrowing, they are not borrowing to come and pay back debt. They are borrowing because they want to use it to do infrastructure investment. That should be clearly stated in the indenture that they are going to issue. So the bond indenture needs to have that kind of clear outline that this amount of money, we are going in for a Euro bond of 2.5 billion, and that Euro bond is exclusively for financing infrastructure. What they can also do is to use a green fund. You can use a green fund because if you mortgage some of your mineral resources and use a green fund, you can generate additional funding from that area and you use that to finance your infrastructure. So I think that there are so many other areas, and there is something we call diaspora bond. The government can also rely on diaspora bond and do so. It is said in the literature that most often than not, diaspora bonds have lower rates as compared to the commercial bonds that we have. Another angle I think we can do is to leverage on Islamic banking and finance. We can use the Sukuk. If we join the Islamic Development Corporation, we can use the Sukuk. We can introduce a Sukuk bond, and that can help us to raise enough revenue to finance our infrastructure. So many African countries have used that. About 27 sub-Saharan African countries are with the Islamic Development Bank, and they are seriously benefiting out of it, interest-free loans and so forth. So I think that the government have a varied options that they can use to finance the infrastructure. And they can also use the infrastructure fund, the one that they have. And even the Ghana Minerals Investment Fund, they can leverage on that and they can even borrow out of it because the Ghana Infrastructure Minerals Investment Fund is supposed to invest. So if we don't want to invest in the standard funding, in the standard sources like the sovereign wealth funds, we can invest that in our infrastructure. It is not any way outside the bracket if you should use the Ghana Mineral Investment Fund funding to finance infrastructure domestically. So there are a lot of sources that the government can generate funds if they think inward rather than just looking for external borrowing at a very cheaper cost. So the Shukuk, for instance, the Mineral Investment Fund, etc. All of these are areas that you can get funding at a cheaper sources, and that can help to the government to leverage on so that we can close the envelope of so much external borrowing.
Let me come to Dr. Mahama on this point. The fiscal regime, as it has been, or at least in the last 8+ years, and now, whichever administration would have taken over, at least now is the NDC, what would he have proffered in terms of dealing with the fiscal space, tightening our belt, and ensuring that we can shore up the economy? What advice would you give to this administration if you could give them any advice on the fiscal economy or the fiscal space?
Yeah, but before that, my colleague mentioned about the real estate VAT. We have 1.8 million units of housing deficit in the country. And if we still have this deficit and you are going to say that people who make money should be taxed, they are basically going to pass the tax to the user of this facility. That is the people seeking to buy these properties. So basically, no, if you like, investor will keep the tax. They'll add it to the cost build-up and pass it on. And with 1.8 million unit deficit of housing, I don't think that it's a good idea. And the government actually wanted to fix this deficit. The deficit is still far from being, the gap is still far from being filled, and I don't think it will be good. On the issue of government funding the 10 billion infrastructure project, unfortunately, hypothetically, the big push, hypothetical, the measures mentioned by my colleague are very viable measures, hypothetically. But the reality is that the government is constrained under the IMF program to seek those sources, because you sign a pact with the, unless of course we drill or we try to sign ourselves out of the program, it will be very difficult to do that. And that down dovetails into your question, under the situation, what the fiscal constraint, what can the government do? I think that government will have to cut back on the on its ambition. That's the first thing. You can concentrate.
It should cut down on what? I missed that.
The ambition, the ambitious 10 billion investment. That is not only that. They also have agricultural programs they want to do. They also have this agrarian development, vegetable development. There are, and you have free senior high school education to deal with. You have, road project you want to do, notwithstanding the arrears in that sector. I think that we would have to, government would really have to prioritize and not, look, like I said, even in the sooner debate, the sooner statement by the president seems to be too ambitious considering the 4 years he has. So he has to cut back on some of the things he wants to do. That's the first thing. Two, I will agree with my colleague that we have to do expenditure rationalization by, for instance, I still believe that there are a lot of revenue leakages in the system, and that we need to plug these loopholes to ensuring that we rake in more revenue, because our target is to do 18 at least percent to GDP of revenue to GDP of 18%. And once we are aspiring to do that, government will need to close in the loophole. Another way I think the government will have to is, we have always complained and we've always talked about it, is the informal sector. How much or what's the proportion of the informal sector that is covered by the tax net? We will need to look at that and then bring in more people into that net to ensuring that everyone pay a fair and then, if you like, equitable share of the tax revenue. Then there is also this particular whole argument, which down dovetail into whether or not the digital economy is strong, and e-commerce. E-commerce is a booming business now. People now sell their products online. How much of this particular e-commerce has been taxed? I think that is another area the government will have to look at, see how the digital economy will have, because we have put in the necessary measure to have digital economy. How then do we then position ourselves to rake in some revenue from that aspect? It's another area that I would advise the government, if I were to advise the government to look at and see how we can cash in that sector as well. Because everyone to now, and then people now sell on TikTok, people sell on YouTube, people sell online transactions are ongoing. How do we ensure that they pay the necessary revenue that
right?
I know, and I'm saying, and I'm picking information. I mean, as opposition, sometimes our role is to intercept information that the government is also trying to tax accounts abroad. In fact, we tried to do it, and they made a whole lot of noise about it. That Ghanaians outside making money would have, or if you have assets outside the country and you're a Ghanaian, based on the tax law, either the residence law or the residence principle or the territorial principle, you have to pay your fair share of tax. And I think that it is difficult for the government because they want to rely on compliance or voluntary declaration by members. Let's hope that that comes in. If that doesn't come in, they will have to find a way of getting revenue through.
All right, Doc, quick intervention, quick question for you. This advice, so you say this administration should cut down on its ambition when it comes to the big push, the $10 billion big push, and you say it is too ambitious. Do you say that based on experience? Because, and I ask for advice for this government. Are you saying that based on experience? Because if you look at the flagship programs of the erstwhile administration, you have free SHS, 1D, 1F, 1V, 1D, Agenda 111, planting for food and jobs, rearing for food and jobs, and more. Are you saying this based on experience?
Right, so I believe that the previous government could have concentrated on a limited few and do them comprehensively. And we end up doing so much. Of course, I have to be fair to the president that we never expected some of this. But in planning and development plan, you have to plan for eventualities, right? So if you factor this eventuality, you realize that there's a need to cut them. For instance, despite the fact that some 60 hospitals have been built, a lot, almost all of the Agenda 111 projects have not been completed. People argue there's no dedicated funding. And on the contrary, there was dedicated funding. But once your revenue is dipping, there's no way the revenue will come into the gift for you to use to fund Agenda 111. So I think that based on these experiences, the government should do few things and do them well and let the Ghanaian people see that these were those we limited ourselves and were able to do them efficiently and effectively. And I'm sure the good people of Ghana will appreciate that, rather than we touching every single thing and end up not doing all of such things.
All right. Interesting points you've made. Dr. Mohammed, what do you make of the gap when it comes to remittances? Remittances, at least per the data we see coming from outside, the World Bank and other data points to the fact that over the last 5-6 years, we've accrued so much, and yet what we have reported that has come through from remittances is a paltry sum. In fact, what supposedly came through our system and taxes we could have secured as a nation would probably have meant that we wouldn't need to go to the IMF. How do we make use of remittances, especially as in some years, if you look at the quota of remittances that have come into the country vis-a-vis our GDP, it has been a huge component. How do we address that issue, Dr. Mohammed?
Great. Before I touch on that, I don't believe that the big push is an ambitious policy. I do hope that we have a huge infrastructure gap in Ghana. And for me, for an economy to be able to expand, you need a very vibrant infrastructure. You need a very vibrant road network. You need a very vibrant airlines. You need a very vibrant railways. If you don't have that, you cannot connect your economy. And the growth that you want to see, you will not be able to see it and see it well. Remittances, as we said, even in 2019, Ghana received about almost $11 billion from remittances. And can you imagine the component of taxes that the government could have generated as at that time? I believe that we have to streamline the way and manner in which remittances are received in the country. For instance, there are so many people who are now using a lot of other, what do you call it, digital finance, fintech, to send remittances. Someone can even send you money from abroad or mobile money. The government needs to harmonize all these networks so that they can know the total amount of money that is being remitted into the country so that they can properly tax it. Gone are the days that we rely more on Western Union. Now, people are finding innovative ways And I tend to start with my brother on using these networks, especially the digital economy, leveraging on that to be able to widen our tax net so that we can generate more revenue. So that remittances must be anchored on. And like I said earlier on, I spoke about diaspora bond. Then I argue that remittances is a foreign capital inflow. And since it's a foreign capital inflow, just like we have foreign direct investment and official development assistance, remittances is one of the key components of foreign capital inflows. So we can leverage on that and issue a bond on that so that people will now bring their money domestically to invest. Sometimes some of our people outside Ghana want to bring their money to invest or invest in the domestic economy, but we do not have a secure means of doing that. So that diaspora bond will be a surest way to leverage on and generate money. So you make it exclusive for Ghanaians abroad. That's the meaning of diaspora bond. And they'll bring back their money. So you can use the remittances figures and leverage on that an issue. So assuming that we're able to get $1 billion from diaspora bond, don't you know that that money can be used to finance a big push? So that you dedicate that strictly for investment in infrastructure, exclusively for that. You are not borrowing that money to use it for recurrent expenditure. You are not borrowing that money to use it to repay back any debt. That money is exclusively meant for that. The IMF programs can always be reviewed. And if they are reviewed, I think that we can benefit out of it.
Thank you for those points. In a bit, my colleague Isaac Ofieje will be joining us with some of the data and what our expectations could be. But let me bring in Theo Acheampong, an economist, political risk analyst as well. He joins the conversation. Doc, good morning.
Yes, good morning, my brother. And good morning to Kabir and Jabir as well.
Right. Here we are. We're on the cusp of getting a new budget, the first budget of this NDC administration. What are your expectations?
I think it takes me back to 2017 when the NPP government came into power. And at the time, a lot of us were expectant, highly expectant of how the government was going to be able to deliver the various promises that they have made. What I mean by that is that what Honorable Ato 14 is going to read this morning would be one of the most consequential budgets that we have heard or seen, certainly in the last 8 years, because it will set the tone for how the government intends to deliver on the various manifesto promises that they have made. I am very optimistic and expectant that we will hear a number of new ideas and solutions to some of the problems that beset the country. And I think there are sort of three aspects that I normally kind of look at this from. The one being how the budget actually would engineer growth. So remember yesterday, the Statistical Service released their figures for last year, and we're already around, 5.7 or so percentage point growth for the year. But we can and should do more, especially how you are able to drive and encourage the agriculture and the manufacturing sector. And this is where, for me, within the budget, the specific policies, specific interventions to drive the 24-hour economy, how that then links to job creation, and importantly, how that is also linked to productivity improvement becomes important. The second aspect really on the debt sustainability. And yes, we've gone through the 3-tier debt exchange program. That was very difficult for a lot of Ghanaians the last few years. But there is talk now really around how do we ensure that going forward, the debt numbers, come down, and ultimately we reach 55% debt to GDP by 2028. And this is where the borrowing and the tax and spend issues, come in. So we know that the government would not be able to go to the international capital market, at least not yet, to borrow. So the efficiency of spending becomes extremely important, going forward. And value for money and all the other things that we've discussed on this platform several years now, the practical measures around how the government intends to deliver that becomes very interesting. And within this, I think there are two sub issues that I would want to hear more from the finance minister on with regards to our state-owned enterprises. So what do we do, or what are the proposals on the table for the ECG, and then also for turning around, Cocoa Board? Luckily, a number of the indicators around this are also captured in the IMF program, and we're expecting the fourth review in the next few weeks. And I think the third, or probably the last one I want to quickly comment on for now is around the tax and spend. So I'm expecting definitely that the government will scrap certain consumer taxes. So the e-levy and the COVID levy and others most likely would go. And then also some sort of incentives that would encourage businesses to be able to produce and to create the jobs under the 24-hour economy. So overall, I think it's exciting times personally for me, and I'm looking forward really to the details within the budget. As we say, the devil is in the details, and often most people don't pay enough attention to the budget when it comes to looking at how it's all going to be financed. So I'm looking forward to the big document and reading the appendices within the budget to see how the numbers square up.
I guess the fine print, that's always where the devil is, in the detail. But even as you talk about some of these, there's been some back and forth when it comes to the big push. $10 billion, you are looking at a period of 4 years, that's about $2.5 billion per year to be pumped into infrastructure, right? Dr. Muhammad believes this administration is being too ambitious. And I asked him whether it was from experience on their own flagship programs. And in a way, he admitted that partly because they could have completed some of those projects if there hadn't been so many. He mentioned Agenda 111 and all of that. On the other hand, Dr. Jabir Mohammed says, no, it is not ambitious. In fact, if the right measures are put in place, he talks about remittances and even a remittance, diaspora remittance situation, diaspora bond, right? Which would then yield about $1 billion, looking at the remittance lacuna that we have. From where you sit, this bond, this $10 billion big push, how viable, how feasible is it from where you sit?
Oh, I think it's very viable. So let's break the numbers down, right? 10 billion over 4 years is so 2.5 billion a year, right? On average, how much do we get from cocoa sales a year? Probably around 2 point something, right, billion. So in relative terms, it's about as much as you get from one of the traditional exports that we get as a country. But I think the other important thing here is that all of this money is actually not coming from government coffers, which is very important to stress. So you look at the manifesto of the NDC, and it's actually quite clear that the $10 billion big infrastructure push is actually being mostly done on the basis of PPPs. So what is important now becomes, is the government in a position fiscally to sort of chip in their own little contribution, if it's either equity investment or debt investment, or even make it possible for the private sector guys that would be building or developing these roads, schools, and hospitals to be able to access relatively cheaper financing to execute and drive the projects. The important distinction is the fact that it is not 100% driven by government of Ghana. There's a huge private sector component within that. And I think even in the NPP's own manifesto as well, something similar was mentioned, because we know that the government does not have the fiscal space to accommodate all of these right spending. And at the same time, we also know that normally the private sector side of things tend to be much more efficient with capital allocation when it comes to infrastructure, right, related projects. So I think that it's definitely possible. What for me is also important is to actually see what are the list of the projects, where are the key priorities, what are the roads that we intend to do. So are we going to do, for example, say Accra to Kumasi, put it in the private sector hands and then toll the road, and then part of those revenues come back to the government. Those are the important things for me. I mean, the idea of the diasporan bond has been around for as long as I can remember, certainly 15 plus years. And it's something that we must, revive. And I would personally would be happy to buy these bonds as a Ghanaian, subject to the return that the government is going to offer me. But again, all of that has to be done or situated in the context of the debt sustainability profile of the country. So you do the DSA analysis and see, okay, if we're going to raise 1.5 billion, or let's say for argument's sake, just $1 billion from the capital market, except this time around is coming from diasporans, then how do we again ensure that the money actually is used in support of capital projects and not recurrent expenditure or even additional, debt servicing? Those are the important things that would feature in the policy conversation.
I see. Just a quick follow-up before I go back to the other guests, and you just joined us, so I also want to give you some prime of place. What levels of discipline would make this big push, viable? Yes, there should be priority areas, but what levels of discipline should we look at, both on maybe the fiscal and I don't know what it would mean for the central bank and the monetary policy end. What levels of discipline do we need?
I am not sure I follow your question fully, so maybe you can explain it a little bit for me.
You mentioned that there should be priority areas and that government spending also should, contemplate some of those areas. But I'm saying that in terms of raising the revenue, beyond what the private enterprise will bring into the fray, what levels of discipline will be needed from government's end to ensure that the big push agenda can actually be executed and not be all over the place?
Oh no, you need the razor sharp focus, and this is where the point that Kabir made becomes very important, right? That there are so many competing demands for a lot of different schools or roads and hospitals, but look, these are infrastructures that we want to invest in that generate an economic return, right? So you want to really focus on those sectors or subsectors that have a huge potential to generate economic multipliers. So I'm thinking off the top of my head. So for example, within the agriculture value chain, we want to be able to build, massive storage facilities and silos. Within the road or the infrastructure sector, some work has been done around the railway, but the urban commuter systems would have to be rethought through again. And at the level of government, it comes down to, for me, ensuring that if we actually say we're spending a cedi on this, then it actually does cost and no more. That is the mental discipline that is required. What I mean by this is that to cut down on the waste and to cut down on the corruption, because we need to stretch the city. We need to stretch this investment to deliver for ordinary Ghanaians in that regard.
Let me come back to you, Dr. Mahama. So beyond this, when it comes to some crucial sectors like the service industry, like the agri sector, what are your expectations?
Yeah, so just a quick one. We are still on this 10 billion. I probably would want that maybe on March 2028, maybe or 2029, we should play this conversation. Look, my senior colleague mentioned about government borrowing. Government can only do $250 million a year under the IMF program. Like I said, unless of course we are drilling, and 150 million multiplied by 4 years is like we can do only 1 billion. Now we talk about institutions. Some of these institutions are negative. They are even trying to balance their books.
You are talking of private sector involvement now, right?
I'm just talking about institutions that we say we can rely on, like Cocoa, where Cocoa board is trying to even balance its books. Now we talk of private sector. Remember, contingent liabilities are now part of our debt calculations. That if you go and then engage a private sector, and the private sector is delivering the good, unless of course the private sector is taking as his equity contribution and earning his revenue over time, it's going to come into government books as debt owed to the government. Like we have the Sino-Hydro project. It was a better arrangement, but consequently it became debt on government books. So based on these experiences, I feel, since I'm not a prophet of doom, I wish the government would succeed, because I appreciate that infrastructure development are key. The returns to investment on infrastructure is established. It's tried learning in developed economies that if you have infrastructure development, it contributes to your growth, and that's actually the backbone upon which growth and development will be based on. But that said, on the more issue of how do we, I think your question was on.
So I was asking you about the agri sector and the service sector.
The agri sector. So the government came out with a plan. The president in the State of the Nation address indicated that they want to do what they call the Green Development Project, the Nkoko Kitinkiti Project. They also wanted to do what they call the Vegetable Development Program and probably the Small Ruminant Program. I think that these, if they are managed well and they are actually implemented well, will contribute, especially poultry. We all admit that the import bill on import of poultry products into the country is quite outrageous. So I believe that the programs around the agricultural value chain or around the agricultural sector by the government, as mentioned, are good programs. And I must admit that if they are implemented well, with the necessary funding, we're cutting back on patronage and getting people who really want to do the project to do them, we would be positioning ourselves to reducing our import bills in terms of agriculture, and we have the prospect of developing. And I must admit that those programs, if they are implemented well, would provide a solution in terms of the agricultural programs.
Interesting views there on agriculture and the service sector in quite a bit. I'm going to bring in Isaac Kofi. He is going to do some analysis for us, and later I'll take your concluding thoughts, gentlemen, as we get ready to head to Parliament as well. Isaac Kofi joins the conversation. Kofi, good morning. So, looking at it, here we are again. It's the dawn of another budget, and the expectations of Ghanaians are high. What can we look at when it comes to this budget that will be presented by Dr. Cassiel Forson?
Well, so I always say that there's already an economic Bible that the finance minister must read from, which is the last full report put out by the IMF on Ghana. And just this morning, what we are learning is that the African Development Bank will not be supporting the country's budget this year. Because under the IMF program, there were 3 multilateral sources that government was supposed to get money from in terms of budgetary support. The IMF itself is number 1, and there's also the World Bank as well as the African Development Bank. But the African Development Bank funding ended in 2024, and so this year we are not expecting any form of funding from the AFDB, who supported the government with some $60 million in 2023 and $44 million in 2024. But this year...
This is not the best of years to be a finance minister, is it?
Absolutely. Nobody wants to be in the shoes.
Trump says we are taking, what, 138 million away from you.
Yeah.
African Development Bank not coming to your aid. You have an IMF.
There's the Qatar people. Program. The presidents have find money to build a sea defense wall. Definitely the finance minister...
You can't envy Dr. Cassiel.
Not at all. Especially looking at this huge figure on the smart wall, looking at the debt servicing obligation between 2025 and 2027. The estimated figure we are 2028 is around 709 billion Ghana cedis. If you bring it into dollars, that's about $60 billion of debt servicing just between 2025 and 2026. The question is, where are we going to get money to?
How do we raise that money?
Exactly. This is huge for me. And that's why this morning we want to focus our conversation on the debt servicing part of this year's budget, because that is the make or break moment for the country. If we are not able to get the breathing space after servicing our debt, we can speak about the beautiful agribusiness policies. We can talk about free SHS. We can talk about so many things. We can increase the beneficiaries of the LEAP program or the school feeding program. But if we do not have the needed fiscal space, the government will find itself in a very tight corner, especially looking at the available funding sources for the government in terms of funding its budget deficit this year. What we are learning is that there is even a cap that has been placed on the external borrowing of the government. That's around some $250 million. And so this year, we are not expecting government to go back to the international capital market. They will be relying heavily on the domestic market, where they will be funding almost all the budget deficits from the domestic market. What we are also learning from the IMF program is that if you look at 2025, the government is expected to go back to the local bond market. We know currently they are only borrowing from the T-bill market, and they're expected to go to the local bond market this year. For me, this is the graph that I think that takes the biscuit. If you look at this graph, for me, paints the picture of why the 2025 budget is so important. Why? Because this graph shows the total debt servicing obligations for the country versus the expected revenue, right? And Ben, if you see the blue line, that is the expected revenue for the country, and the black line is the total debt servicing obligation. What you see is that the closeness, how compact 2025 is. That is why the 2025 budget is a make or break moment. And I agree with Dr. Theo Acheampong that this is the most consequential budget for the country. If we're able to sail through this, what the IMF is projecting is that we will have some breathing space in 2026, 2027, and 2028. But all would depend on...
But this would mean a lot of tightening of our belt and a lot of discipline.
Exactly. Now, if we are not able to get it right in 2025, definitely it will be difficult in 2026, because most of our debt servicing obligations start this year and we need to pay now. The good news, though, is that we are getting some sort of debt servicing relief as a result of the restructuring that was carried out by the former administration. If we had not done the debt restructuring, our balance of payments deficit was estimated at some over $4 billion. Now, as a result of the restructuring that we did, we've been able to reduce that over $4 billion to some $1.4 billion, of which the IMF has pledged to give us some $720 million in 2025 this year. World Bank is coming.
Let's clarify, that's not free money.
That's not free money anyway.
It's not free money.
Actually
it's money we'll still have to pay back.
Absolutely, but definitely with cheaper, interest rate. The World Bank is also coming in with more than $700 million. So these are the two big funding sources for the country this year. And in fact, if the debt restructuring had not been done, it would have been a difficult period for the current finance minister in putting together this year's budget, because definitely your creditors will be dragging you. They would want you to come and pay the money, but the debt servicing obligation or the debt servicing restructuring actually helped us. What we are also learning is that the energy sector will feature heavily in this year's budget. Why is it so? Because of the nature of our energy generation mix, where more than 60% comes from independent power producers of our dependable capacity, that will mean that most of these the independent power producers rely on fuel to produce, right? This year, the projection is that the country will need close to $1.28 billion to buy fuel. And we heard from the energy minister, who said that Now we need close to $700 million to buy for the remainder of the year some, light crude to power our plant. That is a difficult position for the country at the moment because of the, the running of the 24-hour economy, which would heavily depend on energy. What we are also learning from the World Bank is that if we decide to do business as usual, our energy sector shortfalls could rise to as high as $5 billion this year. And the IMF has said it that, look, tackle the problem that ECG is facing, else it will be difficult for you this year.
And ECG has a debt of over what, 40 billion?
Yeah, the president puts us over 50 billion, Ghana cedis. If you bring it into dollars, we are talking about almost $3 billion. And what we were learning from the SIGA report was that this debt was even around $47 billion in 2023. Now the president is saying that ECG is owing more than $50 billion. So the big elephant in the room today and the SOE that the president will be looking at today will be ECG and Cocoa Board. Already, we know the chairman of the National Economic Dialogue says that get rid of Cocoa Board. It's serving no good purpose. Currently, it is only serving as a bad purpose for the country. So get rid of Cocoa Board. Now, the big problem actually is ECG. Why? Because it's fortunate for us that if you look at the sub-Saharan space, I think it's only Ghana, South Africa, and other countries that we can boldly say that we have more than 87% of access to electricity. But that comes at a cost.
It's a big cost.
Especially looking at the fact that we are gradually moving from an energy mix that was predominantly hydro to one that is now more of thermal. If you go on that tangent, you definitely would be paying for fuel. And that's why many have said that it is a good move that the government is starting to build a new gas processing plant, and we'll see how that can tackle the energy sector situation. This was the problem that I was talking about, and the finance minister definitely will be looking at this figure and be scratching his head today and saying that, the IMF is...
raise that
because
sum of money, $4.9 billion.
Yeah, in fact, if you go into the latest reports on Ghana by the IMF, it says that government must reduce the amount of transfers they make to ECG as a result of energy sector shortfalls. It means that you either get ECG to be on its toes or plunge yourself into doomsday, because
in other words, get ECG to be more effective, more efficient, cut losses radically.
Exactly, and also be serious about the cash waterfall mechanism, which many have said that if you look at the cash waterfall mechanism, Ben, it shouldn't only be ECG that should be, bringing money into the cash waterfall mechanism. Gridco should also be, mandated to bring money into the cash waterfall mechanism, because just like the former, MD said that if ECG decide to bring all that they generate, how do they keep the business afloat? And they were pointing fingers. Maybe they didn't mention the agency's name, but what we are learning is that Gridco is also into some sort of power, trading, and ECG also wants Gridco to come into the cash waterfall mechanism and also bring their revenue so that you have enough to share to all.
What's interesting is that Gridco also has its challenges. All of those in the chain, VRA, Gridco, even Netco, all of them have their own challenges. And what it would mean, trying to sustain self and also contributing to the kitty, that's going to be interesting.
It will be interesting. And for ECG, if Gridco comes into the domain, there will be more revenue. The finance ministry will not have to worry itself about paying energy sector shortfalls and all of that. And the IMF has given a strong warning to ECG. And according to them, ECG must stop some of the procurement that are not their mandates, especially purchasing of fuel. It's not the mandate of ECG under the cash waterfall mechanism. What we are learning is that usually ECG will say that because they don't want the country to be in darkness, they get clearance from the finance ministry to buy fuel to power plant. But what we are learning is that the IMF is saying the finance ministry itself must reduce the amount of transfers they give to the energy sector in terms of shortfalls. And you can see this projection. For me, this is scary. If we decide to go business as usual and we don't do anything about our energy sector, the World Bank is projecting that energy sector shortfalls could rise to as high as $8.2 billion by 2027. And
That's
that for me,
scary thought.
Perish
that thought.
I mean, the question is, if we get to this point, how and where are we going to get the money to fund this? That will mean that Dumso will be knocking at our doors. And the creditors who would definitely, almost everybody will be looking at this year's budget, but this year's budget is so important to the Eurobond creditors because, I mean, they took the biggest component or the biggest chunk of the haircut that went on in the external space. We understand that the bilateral creditors, what they gave Ghana was a moratorium. So you have like a breathing space to pay back your debt. But if you go onto the debt restructuring that was done at the commercial level, most of the bondholders decided to go for the power bonds or the disco bonds that resulted in significant amount of haircut. They actually had to forgo a lot for Ghana to have that breathing space.
Right.
And this is our debt servicing obligation to the Eurobond creditors, starting from let's look at 2023, 2024. This was the estimation that we were seeing. And this year it is expected to be around more than $600 million that we are supposed to pay to the Eurobond creditors. It is interesting to see how government is going to go about that. But once you talk about ECG, you need to talk about Cocoa Board. And I was very, happy when you started asking our guests about, remittances, because what we are learning is that there are now African countries who are using remittances, converting them into diaspora bonds, and not relying solely on the international market or the multilateral organization. This is a story of Cocoa Board, and this is...
So before you go to Cocoa Board, let me just come in here. We'll come back to that specific bit, because Cocoa Board is, of course, has been in decline, and we must remedy that situation. But let's also head to Parliament now. And we have Kweku Asante, our own parliamentary correspondent. We also have George Riafio of the business team standing by. They're going to be interacting with Theo Acheampong, the minority spokesperson on the economy. Let's find out what he has to share with all of us, and then we'll come back into the studio.
Right, Benjamin, we're live here in Parliament, where any moment from now, members of Parliament will be 10 a.m.
Just that you can tell us from Parliament.
Finance Minister Dr. Kassil Atuforse will present the budget on behalf of the President. This is the first time Dr. Kassil Atuforse will present budget. He was a deputy minister under He has a big agenda that he believes will shape the state of the economy. I have here the minority spokesman on the economy. We'll get to him pretty shortly. But George Rafi, you've been here. You've been looking at the situation, what you've been picking, what you've been learning.
Hear what they are articulating. So let's come back into the studio. Back to you, Kofi.
The story of cocoa, because in fact, if you take all our foreign exchange earners, the big guys, it is only cocoa that we can beat our chest and say we get more than 90% of whatever we export. And so when the cocoa sector is in trouble, the entire economy definitely will also be in trouble. Just look at how, hard or high we've fallen from producing over 1 million metric tons to now a little over 500,000 metric tons. And this year, the projection is that if we are not able to tackle illegal mining like we are supposed to, we probably will be falling below the 500 metric tons zone. And in fact, the interesting thing is that we are one of the producing countries that practice syndicated loan, where we sell the cocoa we produce in advance. What happened last year was that we sold the cocoa in advance and we were not able to supply what we had promised. And so there is actually deficit. I remember there were a group of traders who said that they, just by trading with Ghana, they lost close to $1.4 billion because Ghana could not produce the cocoa that supplied the cocoa that they had promised. And what happened is that they had to go into their inventories to supply their clients as well. And restocking their inventories actually cost them a lot because of the high level of prices we saw cocoa went in 2024. This year, the story might be different if we are able to go above 600 metric tons and also service the deficit that we have. But the bad news is that because of the current situation we have, we might not see this year's budget going heavy on the cocoa syndicated loan. The estimated amount was some $1.5 billion this year, but because of the situation we are in, we don't even have enough cocoa to go into the market to assure a syndicate of bankers or syndicated guys that possibly will be able to produce this amount to give us this money. This means that the finance minister will not have access to the syndicated loan this year, and it will be interesting to see how he goes about closing that gap. Not just that, he's also promised a number of tax cuts that many are also looking forward to. Per our estimation, if you look at all the 3 taxes that we can find data to estimate, so you look at the COVID-19 levy, the betting tax, and then also the e-levy, we're estimating that the revenue loss could be as high as over 7 billion Ghana cedis, and it'll be interesting to see how the finance minister will close this gap, Benjamin.
Well, it's going to be a lot of calculations for sure.
Absolutely.
How to, plug holes, how to take away from here. Basically, in some way, robbing Peter to pay Paul, but it must all make sense in the end.
Yeah, it must
with
balance.
Our own debt servicing and everything in between, no matter how minimal. But, all that you said also reminded me of some of the debt relief we have. You remember HIPIC?
I do.
The debt relief we've got, and how we soon found ourselves back on the trajectory of debt and then going back to the IMF. Let's see how this goes. Isaac Kofi there, of course, our own in-house, we call him our in-house government statistician. He does the figure work for us. But let's conclude with our guests in the studio, at least from here, and they on Zoom, and then we'll head to Parliament where the budget statement will be delivered by Dr. Cassiel Ato-Force, the Finance Minister. I know Dr. Mahama got the last bite. I'll take your concluding thoughts, but let me start with Dr. Theo Acheampong.
Let him go. All right, that's it.
Hello, Doc. Dr. Theo Acheampong, are you with me? All right. Let me go to Dr. Mohammed. What are your quick thoughts for me? I'll just take 30 seconds each from you, gentlemen, and then we'll move on. Dr. Mohammed?
Well, I think the reforms in the energy sector is eminent in ensuring that we bring it back to track. Like I noted the last time, we have to ensure that we go back to the enclave power project. The enclave power project is generating close to 90% or 95% of the revenue that ECG give the power to them to generate from the free zone area. So if we can have similar enclave one across all the other divide, I believe that we'll be able to close the financing gap in the energy sector. The critical movement is about the energy financing gap, about 80 billion Ghana cedis. Your statistician was giving us some figures, but the energy and green transition minister says that it's about 80 billion Ghana cedis. So I think that we need to work around that figures and correct it. I mean, by 2027, as he indicated, $8.2 billion is really a very tough one. So I believe that we have to work now to be able to rationalize the energy sector to put things in a better track.
Thank you. Dr. Mahama, final thoughts.
Yeah, so I made a point yesterday, and I want to reiterate it, that the information I'm picking, and I hope that is not true, that the government tried to pad up some areas that are not actually found in the gift mix. And if the government is found doing that, I think it's not going to be good for our governance. And I don't want to see such in the budget. If it's there, I will highlight it, because that was what we did. And we had to pay what you mean for no work done. So that, I think that is a concern I need to reiterate. People will not see why I'll have to raise it. I should wait. I don't have to wait for a crime to happen before I say it. So that I'll have to know this point clearly. And I hope the Prime Minister will come, we'll get the fine details, we interrogate them, and we'll serve the good people of Ghana with the best, because that is our work, to have oversight over the budget and to approve thereof.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the conversation. And we'll cross over now to Kweku Asante and George Wiafe, who are standing by. But let me quickly acknowledge we also had Dr. Theo Acheampong joining the conversation. He's an economist. We also had joining the conversation via Zoom Dr. Theo Kabiru Mahama, Member of Parliament for Wali Wali, and we also had Dr. Jabir Mohammed, Senior Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Let's cross over now to Kweku Asante in Parliament and, of course, George Wiafe. Kweku, if you can hear me, take it away.
Yes, Benjamin, any moment from now, we expect a number of the 275 members of parliament currently looking down, none of them currently seated, to take their seats ultimately for the budget presentation to be read. And this is the first presentation by the new NDC administration since they won power in 2024. And they say that this will be a key plank in the economic program, and that is why Dr. Kesela Forson is expected today to announce some cuts in some taxes. But ultimately, given the analysis we've made and the billions of Ghana cedis in terms of the whole that will create in the revenue and the finances, how exactly does he intend to fix that and plug that? He's talked about cutting wasteful expenditure. What exactly does that mean, and how will he do that? We'll also pretty shortly speak to the ranking member on the Economy and Development Committee, Kojo Ponkroma. But George Rafi is here with me. George, what are you learning about what we perhaps will hear from?
Well, I've always wanted to give a caveat for presentations like this because, as I said earlier on, we've had instances where even an hour to presentation, things might change. But again, if you look at the broader picture, this thing is all about how much government intends to spend for this year and how much it intends to raise in terms of revenue. As for the broader policies, we know that it will be guided by their manifesto that they came to the public during the elections and then they won the elections. But if you look at expenditure, some might say that it might be a very interesting and challenging one because you realize that revenue has not been doing well. Now, you spoke about cuts. Q4 GDP estimate showed a slowdown to 3.6. If these cuts are not well targeted, it could have an impact on growth. And that's why some will say that the minister might really be in a tight corner, even though he wants to do everything to contain expenditure. Where are you going to cut? We hear what he has described as wasteful expenditure. What do you describe as wasteful expenditure? If you also look at non-essential spending, what is non-essential spending? If you look at the budget, I mean, compensation for public sector workers or the wage bill takes a chunk of government expenditure. What are you left with? Capital expenditure and certain things. So where is he going to cut?
And this is a important question. Yesterday, listening to Kojo Ponkroma on News Desk, he raised some of those issues, and he's here with us. And so I'm going to allow you to talk to him and get some understanding from him. Honorable Kojo Ponkroma is the ranking on the Committee on Economy and Development. I'm going to leave you and George Afe to have a conversation about what your own expectation from the minority is. So,
Kojo, thank you so much for joining us on our coverage here for the budget 2025. Let me first start with you on your expectation, getting it right, ranking member on the Economic Committee. I am right on that one. Let me first start with you on your expectation for this budget presentation.
I think there are about four major things that everybody is expecting. First is that the commitments that this administration made during the campaign period, which is then translated into what you call a social contract with the people of Ghana, will be fulfilled. They made about 273 economic promises.
You already done the count.
Well, yeah, we've gone through the manifesto, 273 economic promises. Of course, you don't expect that they'll fulfill all of it in the first year, but you want to see the foundational major ones fulfilled in this first campaign manifesto, which is translated into a budget, and you want to see at least a good count of that in this one. So everybody will be expecting that they live by their promises. Number two, we in particular in the minority are expecting that they will be truthful to the economic record of this country. And I think we've had opportunity to explain that it is important to be truthful to the economic record for various reasons. When we have time, we'll go into that one. Number three, there are everyday issues that the Ghanaian is looking forward to. Cost of living, cost of transport, fuel, etc. Unemployment in particular, funding, infrastructure, etc. that people are expecting to hear the administration respond to in this particular budget. And then number four, there are a number of things that across the divide we had agreed on before the election, particularly the fiscal consolidation strategy. And you would expect that in this budget, apart from all the rhetoric and the propaganda, you actually see the numbers reflect fiscal consolidation. These are about
Could you spoke about being truthful with the numbers, but GDP data is GDP data. Fiscal deficit is fiscal deficit, and that is there for everyone to verify.
Yeah.
Why that concern about being truthful with the data and playing with the data?
If our friends in the majority agreed with you, Felix Kwasi-Fosu, Minister of State for Government Communication, will not have issued a statement that they are calling a national economic dialogue to communicate what they call the true state of the economy. Because in the beginning, what they sought to do was to do a lot of propaganda with the economic numbers and create an impression that things were totally out of gear. You recall the president said that this economy had been criminally managed. Yet when he appeared here, because the days after that comment, the market started reacting, he pulled back. And then he said that he was leaving it for the finance minister to go to the National Economic Dialogue and provide some more detail on what they call the criminally managed economy. When the finance minister went to the National Economic Dialogue, he also pulled back. He didn't go do propaganda. He stuck to the facts. This is the third opportunity they have, and already you can hear the decibel levels going up on NDC platforms, NDC social media, that they should come and tell a very bleak story of the economy. And we have always insisted, going back to when they called the National Economic Dialogue, that if you want the facts on the Ghanaian economy, the Ghana Statistical Service will tell you. Just yesterday, they told us that post-COVID, and in 2024, we grew by 5.7%.
Yeah, that's the annual growth.
Yes.
But Q4, it slowed to 3.6%.
But the year-on-year growth, which you are measuring, is 5.7. Remember, the first 3 years, we had done 7%. We took over at 3.4 from the Mahama administration at the end of 2016. And we upped growth in the economy to 7%, average 7% in the first 3 years before COVID hit us. And then we started the process of recovery. We turned it around. Now we are being told 5.7. It doesn't lie in the mouth of the finance minister to come here and say he disagrees with the Ghana Statistical Service. Yesterday, when they also told us that the GDP estimate for the year 2024 exceeded the 1 trillion Ghana cedis that we had projected.
1.2.
It was 1.2. What that means now is that your debt burden has gone down. So debt to GDP is somewhere.
The numbers are going to change.
It's going to be somewhere, if I'm right, somewhere around 61.8% if you work the math properly. So we're expecting that the minister responsible for finance will be truthful to the economic record. He should not fall prey to the hawks in his party who are asking that they should come and paint a very bleak picture, because the markets will react, they will scare away investors, and it will not even be true to the economic record. Secondly, as part of being truthful to the economic record, we are urging on him that this is a time in government where if you don't take care, all manner of persons will show up making claims of government. Government owes me this, government owes me that, government owes me that. And I'll give you 2 examples. In 2009, when Dr. Kwabena Dufo was finance minister, he accepted a lot of those claims and created a new line in the budget called judgment debt. And you recall how it was then exploited for create, loot, and share opportunities eventually. In fact, when the Supreme Court ruled on the Woyome matter, they explained what had happened, that people had created a phantom expenditure line, had looted it, and people had shared it. When we came in 2017, we had a lot of claims. You'll recall the press conference we had talking about the fact that some 7 billion extra was being urged on us to pay. Eventually, further validation ensured that we did not fall into that same trap. And so we are urging on him not to fall into that trap and to be truthful to the economic record of the Republic.
But some would also say that in being truthful is not all that rosy. And we're yet to get the fine details about the true situation when it comes to the deficit, the fiscal situation, and even how you fared under the fund program and then 2024. For any government that is taken over, and if the fiscal or the budget deficit is bigger than what has been estimated, that is a concern for any new finance minister to highlight.
The deficit is not estimated. It's a matter of fact. The IMF has a definition for how you come to accepting expenditure obligations of the Republic and how you program it into it. And we have all agreed on a national platform for accepting and programming it. When you go by that, those are figures that nobody will dispute. If you choose to go outside that and manufacture some numbers or listen to people who are making claims on government, then you fall into a trap where you are now coming up with something that is not a true reflection of the situation.
Let's come to expenditure. And you were on the economy committee, you've heard a lot of things. What should be the minister's plan? Or if he goes about cutting, how should these cuts be done to ensure that the expected shocks on the economy is well managed?
So I would rather say generally, across the political divide, we agreed on what we call a fiscal consolidation strategy. You recall the MPP, when we were putting our manifesto together, we spoke a lot about cutting away these 3 taxes. That was when people were even asking, why don't you cut the taxes now?
Because if you do now, what will you do tomorrow?
And then we answered that the budget had already been programmed for 2024. It is when we build the new fiscal framework for 2025 that we can take those taxes off. And when we said it, people, didn't believe us. You notice that when the new administration came, from January 7th till now, they haven't taken it off. Why? Because there's an expenditure and advance of appropriation that they are working with. They are now bringing the new budget. So now is when you can take it off. We expect that as part of that fiscal consolidation strategy, you take off those taxes, you will reduce your reliance on financing or on borrowing. And to avoid creating a hole on the expenditure side, you will cut expenditure. So again, I take you back to the MPP's manifesto. We programmed that we're going to cut expenditure by about 3% of GDP. I keep making the point
that's huge.
Yes, looking at GDP estimates for 2024, 1% of GDP was about 10 billion. So 3% of GDP is about 30 billion. So you cut about 7 billion on the revenue side, but you cut about 30 billion on the expenditure side. That is a net of about 23 gain to the Republic. So in the fiscal consolidation strategy and the fiscal consolidation conversation we had in 2024, we came to the table that cut these 3, but cut expenses to compensate. At the time, our colleagues on the other side made a lot of political capital about cut these 3. And what you cut on the other side, our views that they were a bit fudgy. They said they will cut wasteful expenditure, they will rationalize expenditure.
You've been in government before and you've had a chance of engaging the former Minister of Finance. What do you make of this concern that they've raised about wasteful expenditure?
The numbers will tell. In fact, if you look at the KPMG pre-budget report, they advise that the government should move away from the conversation of wasteful expenditure because it's a very subjective, matter.
Discretionary or
everybody says expenditure is not even enough. It doesn't satisfy the purpose. When you see people complaining, our roads are not good, there's doom saw here, water is not flowing here, all of that is expenditure waiting. So if you say cut wasteful expenditure, it's subjective. And so what KPMG, for example, advises the government to do is to be definite in a cut. That is what we did in our manifesto. Dr. Bawumia was clear that we're going to cut 3% of GDP, and so you can measure it and see it in the numbers. Now, today, when they bring the projected appropriation numbers, what all of us should now be doing is check the numbers. Don't be too excited that I've reduced number of ministers, I've reduced this, check the numbers. Because if, for example, I have 80 ministers and it's costing 100 million to run government machinery, and you have 60 ministers and it's costing 120 million, the numbers are exposing the fact that in rhetoric you've told us you've reduced, but in terms of the cost to the exchequer, it's gone up. So the sweetness of the pudding, like they say, is in the eating. We have to look at the numbers and then we'll see whether or not there's been a cut. We advertised a 3% cut in GDP, that's about 30 billion. Let's see what this administration will do.
Let me still pick your thought finally on revenue as well. What should be the approach and strategy? We've learned that they are going to be aggressive on compliance and also restructuring the VAT structure itself. And
that is code language for they are going to introduce VAT on new areas. What you are saying, I keep making the point that...
Is that what you have picked up and you can confirm few hours to this presentation?
We have worked with the same technocrats.
New levies will be introduced, new VAT handles will be introduced.
No, I don't expect new VAT handles. I don't expect...
What would the rationalization lead to?
So what I sense the government is going to do is that they are going to slap VAT on things that did not already have VAT on them, or things that we had removed VAT on because it hadn't worked in the past. The language they are using suggests to me that they won't create new taxes, but what they will do is that they will either increase the rate of some of the old taxes, something that was 1%, they'll move it to 3%, something that did not affect, or VAT that didn't affect a particular category of services, they will add it to it. But you see, that will end up going back to the original scenario of overtaxing the productive sector. The places where we removed VAT, if they go that way, the things that we removed VAT on, we removed them because there was an overtaxation of those areas. And in fact, some of those areas like financial services, if you look at insurance, etc., it was beginning to constrain the rate of growth in those financial service areas. And so we took it off. If you reintroduce it, what you are doing is that, one, you are reneging on your promise to reduce the levels of taxation. So you've taken away 3 here and you've introduced 6 at the back. That's not being honest and not being fair with the people of Ghana. Secondly, you are going to go back to the original situation of constraining growth in these areas. We think that the prudent thing to do is to stick by your word. We agreed we'll cut the taxes. Cut them. Of course, it will have a 6 to 7 billion implication on the expenditure side, but cut those expenses. Don't do what they call rationalization, wasteful. Cut it, be definite, so that in the end, the fiscal consolidation that you are claiming will be achieved.
Should it be more of a front-loaded fiscal consolidation, or it should be a gradual one, some would say?
You know, when you come to government at first, you have a lot of goodwill. That's when you have to take the difficult decisions. If you don't, as the years go by, and a lot more people start getting disappointed because their expectations have not been fulfilled, it becomes difficult to master the political will to take the tough decisions. So I'll go for front-loading any day.
Thank you. That's Kojo Oponekuma. He's a ranking
George, before you
member.
let Kojo go, I want to take his view on a few things. And it's a bullet. E-levy, should it go or should it stay?
It should go. I think we mentioned in our manifesto that if we are building the 2025 fiscal program, we'll take it away.
COVID levy.
We also mentioned same, and betting same as well.
Those three raise concern, like Professor Bobkin, that there are behavioral issues having to do with these taxes, particularly betting tax, for which reason you must let it stay. And so where do you lean on that? Because there are those who say that the political class seem to have cowered to the political pressure that have come with some of these taxes because of how betting has become such a big issue.
You have to go back to the why. Why were these taxes introduced? So, for example, we have sin taxes, tobacco, alcohol, etc. We introduced those sin taxes, among other things, to curb uptake or growth in those areas. Is that the same for e-levy? Is that the same for COVID? Is that the same for betting? I respectfully submit that no. It was because post-2020, when there was a need to close the fiscal gap because of the shocks that we had suffered, we needed to introduce these revenue measures. And what we are saying is that having moved on from there, it's a good time to redesign the fiscal framework and take them. If it had been a scenario where the betting levy, for example, had been introduced as a sin levy or a sin tax, that argument will suffice. By the way, talking of that, go back to my brother Ato Forson's earlier position on betting taxes. When he was of the view that it should be a sin tax. And therefore, in that case, you will not expect that in this budget, they will be taking it out. We sense that they may not take it away fully, they may take away a certain component of it. We'll see where the numbers are. But if you are looking for consistency with policy arguments, we are demonstrating consistency with those policy arguments, and they are now shifting because of political pressure.
I want to take you on finally on Ghana Revenue Authority and raising revenue. Almost every time the Ghana Revenue Authority in the past few years, they hit the target. There are those who view that we are just not setting the right target, and that there is a lot of money in the system to go after instead of setting very easy targets and then meeting them easily and thinking that we can pat ourselves at the back.
It is a conundrum that we find ourselves in. The target is set at a particular level, and very often they will tell you that they have met or they have exceeded the target. Those who share that view are right, because there's so much room, for example, in the property tax area. It is an area that we have all agreed has so much potential. It's not collected enough, and we need to do better. We tried a number of options on it. We didn't succeed. You would expect that the new administration will pay attention to that area and come up with a superior way of trying to mobilize in that area, and not necessarily increase VAT or increase taxes on some specific industries. Those are the areas that when you go, you can broaden the tax base. The last thing, we also managed to develop a very credible database that allowed you to identify people who are in the Ghanaian Republic using the National ID database, but people who you couldn't find on the tax database. And there was an effort to go after these people so that they pay their quota. That is an exercise that must continue. You don't abandon it and say you are going to increase VAT on other things. That's where to go.
Right. Thank you very much, Kojo.
Thank you,
Kojo Oponekuma, the former Minister of Information, former Minister for Works and Housing, and currently the minority spokesperson on the economy. He's raised a couple of issues, what exactly his expectations are. And George, that's a very good interview.
I mean, interesting, and we're still trying to get more persons to join us in terms of our coverage in Parliament, in terms of even the Minister of Government spokesperson or the presidential spokesperson to join us right here in our coverage. But I mean, those are quite interesting revelations, and as is said, the sweetness lies in the pudding, and let's see what the Finance Minister is going to come up with in terms of when it comes to those cuts, in terms of those expenditure rationalization. What is he going to do to deal with all those problems? Those are things that we'll be trying to get more analysis on in terms of our coverage for the 2025 budget. You should see my back there, so filing in terms of the members of Parliament, and very soon the House members would come here for a debate or in terms of procedural things, and then the budget representative. Okay, cool. Help us, for those of us who don't appreciate the workings of Parliament. What is going to happen today? We've seen members, you can see the minister or the government spokesperson on communications, or the government, the spokesperson too.
The president and then the Minister of State in charge of government.
He's already seated. We knew that there was a caucus meeting as well. Help us, run us through what is going to happen this morning in the chamber.
On big days like these, there are a lot of caucus meetings because the caucuses have to meet to firm up certain positions. Obviously, the majority side, because they are in government, will get a certain idea about what is coming. And so they have to go and strategize and prepare. If the minister says this and the minority side comes up with GS and other things, how do you respond? And then there's also the minority side who will be picking up information, picking up charters, and not having anything confirmed, and also having to come and strategize and say that this is exactly how we want it to play. It's past 9 a.m. now. The caucus meetings, as I understand now, have all ended because NPP MPs, as
9:41. It doesn't look like the 10 a.m.
will be met at all.
Yeah.
And you see a number of NPP MPs now coming in. Harun Idrisu, the Minister of Education, is also here in a conversation with the Minister of State in charge of government communication. And so after 10 o'clock a.m., this chamber will begin filling up until some point that the Speaker of Parliament will then come in. There's also what they call the housekeeping matters. You will never understand what exactly goes into the housekeeping matters, but the Finance Minister will have to do certain things to ensure that he is received appropriately. And so when he comes
those things have delayed the presentation in previous times.
You have to do that. And the whole of last week, the minority leadership kept reminding the majority leadership that those things must be taken care of. You have to do what you have to do. And so all those matters have to be taken care of, and then ultimately the minister will be received well. When all that is properly dealt with, and we'll get a couple of people more, then the minister will come to the ceremonial entrance and raise his bag. That is where he will come with his deputies and other staff of the finance ministry to sort of come in. And so when all that is done, then the Speaker of Parliament, once the leadership gives him an indication that all those matters have been properly taken care of and the finance minister is now to be received, he will then walk in, he will come and take his seat. The Speaker of Parliament will do a couple of formalities. Today is a one-item day. All they have to do is the budget presentation.
Wouldn't there be any corrections of previous sittings? Because often they would do that even for the State of the Nation address and even the budget presentation. Normally, are we going to see that happen today as well?
It will depend on, for instance, the communication of the finance minister to the Speaker and the leadership in terms of the volume. Because in the last State of the Nation address, the votes and proceedings of the previous day, for instance, was not corrected. They left it to the next day and did it. And so if they have the room and they feel like these are matters they can deal with, immediately the Speaker of Parliament takes a seat, they'll take the prayer. Perhaps if the Speaker is inclined to take the pledge, which now they take quite regularly. When that is done, the Speaker of Parliament will then invite the finance minister who will take that black seat that is just adjacent the seat of the minority leader. That is where he will sit, just alongside the majority leader. He will take his seat, he will be invited, he will go to the dispatch box and then ultimately start reading. The budget presentation could be hours, could be an hour, could be 2 hours, could be 3 hours. MPs will be expected to be seated to listen to all of that.
It's 9:44 a.m. From the way things are going right now, it appears that we cannot work with the 10 a.m. time for the presentation. All other things being equal, we'll be looking at somewhere around 10:30 or 11 a.m.
I think even 10:30 looks like very ambitious. It could go to 11 to
11:30.
Especially if the housekeeping matters are not taken care of.
You've mentioned the housekeeping matters. We have a Minister of Finance who is a member of Parliament. would it make things easier in terms of dealing with those housekeeping matters that often delays the presentation of the budget?
Exactly. In fact, those were some of the issues that were raised. In the last few years, we haven't had a finance minister who's been a member of parliament, with the exception of Amin Adam, who took over from Ken Ofori-Atta. And so he had that to deal with. And Ken Ofori-Atta had a little challenge with that because he wasn't a member of parliament. And he had to
had that challenge when he had to deal with that.
I remember at one point,
and he's over there. You could see the cameras. You see the former Minister of Finance having a chat with the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority as well in the chamber there. We've seen the Minister of Education as well, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, also over there having a chat. So that said is in the chamber.
So the Finance Minister, knowing what he knows, and Finance Minister Atufo has been a minority leader before. And so he has liaised with his colleagues on the other side to take care of these matters. And you must do it. It's not something that you can go without doing it. And in fact, there have been talks in Parliament that even when the president came, some of those matters were not dealt with. But the minority were magnanimous enough. They still came here, received the president, and listened to him. This time around, perhaps all these matters would have to be dealt with. And given that he himself is a member of parliament, he's in his 5th term now, a very experienced senior member of parliament, he knows the inner workings of some of these things. The expectation is that he will get all that done. And perhaps that may have been done because I've seen the chief whip on the minority side already in parliament. Sometimes when these issues have not been dealt with, you see an entire house, an entire side of the house, none of them will be in the chamber.
But you see him over there having a chat at the that table.
Already in there, coming in, perhaps some of these matters have been dealt with, but we'll get to know. But clearly, like you said, 10 a.m., we can't meet that time. Perhaps it will be 11, and that is my inkling that this will go past 11 before we'll see Atufo at the dispatch box with the budget.
Can we describe this session as a special session? Because we've seen already, if you look at the public gallery here, all the chairs have been numbered in terms of the VVIPs who have been invited here. If you also look at that far end over there, we have seen the Deputy or the Commissioner General in charge of customs sitting over there. I've seen the aide to the Governor of the Bank of Ghana already around. What is it about this sitting? Is it just about presentation, or it can be described also as a special session in parliamentary proceedings?
If you look at Parliament, some of the very special events that they have in a calendar year is the State of the Nation address. That is at the height or at the heart of what Parliament does in terms of the speciality of the events. And when it comes to that, the arrangement is completely different. You have seats up until where the GRA boss himself with Setepe seated.
Setepe and Haruna Idrisu.
You have
the three of them
there.
are having a chat
Exactly, and sometimes this place is all cleared up with drums and other things. In terms of the hierarchy, is the budget presentation before the media budget presentation. Those are the key highlights. And so this is a very special event. In fact, if you look within the chamber, you see some pockets of brown seats that have been placed at certain places because ministers of state, for instance, who are not members of parliament, are expected to come in and come and witness this event. And so arrangements have been made for them. And so this is a pretty special arrangement in terms of how the parliamentary calendar is and in terms of all this coverage. And so this is pretty special. You look at it from the arrangement, you look at it from the items that will be taken care of. Because as soon as the speaker, the finance minister reads the budget, the minority leader will speak in moving a motion to adjourn the House. The majority leader will second that. Then the sitting will be adjourned. MPs will go out there, speak to the media, and then from perhaps tomorrow, the debate will start. The committees will start working ahead of this weekend, going to Ho or somewhere else to do a post-budget workshop. That will also be done. There will also be concerns about cost, because I remember the NDC while in opposition raised issues with some of those issues and said that
this time round did not join them for the orientation.
They said that there were cost matters having to do with holding a post-budget workshop or orientation outside of Accra, and that you could do it in Parliament. At the time they said that, they were playing politics with that, and they got it. And so just 2 weeks ago, they had a orientation at Ho, and the minorities had boycotted that because they also cited cost concerns. And so all these matters have to be dealt with, and going up until Friday before some of these decisions are taken, we'll get to know what exactly is going to happen with that.
And this coverage of the 2025 budget, we'll still be getting in some special guests in here in terms of ministers of state, in terms of their expectation for the budget that will be presented very soon. The name is George Afi and Kweku here. Coverage of the 2025 budget. Be coming back soon because some of our invited guest or special guest appear on this program will be joining us very, very soon. So if I could borrow the words of Giolate, over to you guys in the studio. We'll be coming back very soon.
Well, and that was from Parliament, where the Finance Minister will be delivering the budget statement, and we had our very own George Weafe and Kweku Asante delivering the goods there. But joining the conversation quickly, we have Mr. Stanley Raja Koshi Aholu, President of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. He joins us with some thoughts. Mr. Aholu, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. Morning, Benjamin.
Right. Let's go straight for the jugular. In terms of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping, the shipping or maritime community, what would be your expectations of the 2025 budget statement?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Let me just go straight into it. The Chamber of Shipping, and including the maritime community, is keen to see if this year's budget has factored into it the potential impacts of regulation that is a consideration.
Mr. Aholu, you would have to speak up. There's a little interference in the connection. So just speak up for me. Reposition yourself and speak up for me. You're speaking of potential.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
And there's no feedback, right?
Yes,
Hello?
you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying that the chamber is expecting to see if this year's budget has factored into it the potential impacts of regulation that is under consideration by the International Maritime Organization be passed this April 2025, which may include a levy on carbon emissions. This levy, if passed, could result in an increase in freight by some 10 to 12%, leading to potential increase in the cost of goods and services imported into Ghana. Ghana's food import bill is also expected to increase by some 3.5, estimated about $19 million within 3 to 6 months of the levy coming into effect. Decarbonizing shipping will have a significant impact on food security and the cost of doing business in Ghana, and it will be critical for the minister to factor these exogenous factors into his budget. So that's the first thing we are concerned about. The second is Ghana is paying an estimated $1.9 billion for maritime transport services to businesses outside of Ghana. The Chamber would like to see some concrete policy action aimed at clawing back some of this trade so that it can instead be provided by Ghanaian companies and the revenue retained in country. As an illustration, if Ghanaian companies are encouraged and supported to provide even 20% of the maritime transport services that we currently import, that could retain an estimated $380 million in country with significant benefits by way of corporate income tax for the state. Lastly, in the same spirit of import substitution, which is what I've been talking about, Ghana's total merchandise trade in 2023 was $30.6 billion, with cargo insurance typically pegged at 2% of the cost and freight value of the cargo, Ghanaians are paying as much as 600 million in insurance premium to foreign insurers. There's no reason why such leakages should continue when we have a Ghanaian insurance industry that can underwrite such risks. So for us at the Chamber, these are the issues we expect to be addressed in the budget. Rather than have the same old situation where, because government is heavily dependent upon taxation from the ports, it will just continue, increasing tax on goods coming through the ports, and we are in a situation where we're just throwing money away. So that's what I would say on behalf of the Chamber and the shipping community.
Right. Well, we're grateful, and we'll see how these expectations shape what is going to be presented. As of this time, obviously, what the finance minister is going to present by way of the budget has already been put together, but we'll see how the maritime industry will be impacted positively or negatively on the back of these developments.
Thank you very much.
The one who joined us for a conversation a short while ago, Mr. Stanley Raja Koshi Aholu, President of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. Let me tell you about Waylead Properties. Are you thinking of a rewarding investment you can engage in? Well, Waylead Company Limited is your preferred choice for such an investment. Waylead Company Limited is a real estate company with several developments to its credit right here in Accra. You get to invest in our new development, Willow Lane, where elegance will meet tranquility in the heart of Accra. We provide quality housing at an affordable cost and also with a flexible payment option. At Waylead Properties, we provide you with 24-hour security, reliable power supply, and other social amenities to make your stay a memorable one. All you have to do now is call 0240 111 119 or 0504 499 999. You can also check us out www.waylead.org. Let me also tell you about the fact that every year thousands of Ghana's brightest minds seek better prospects abroad, leaving a gap in our workforce. But the question, how can Ghana inspire its talent to stay? Join David Ofosudote, Professor Mary Setrana, and His Excellency, Her Excellency Dr. Amina Gurib Fakim, a former president of Mauritius, at the 12th edition of the Ishmael Yamson and Associates Business Roundtable to discuss managing the talent exodus, leveraging private-public partnerships for growth. And the date is the 7th of May 2025, the venue Labadi Beach Hotel. The time is 9 a.m. Now, to register your attendance, text your name and organization to 0530 117 202. You can also send a message to info@ieyamson.com. info@ieyamson.com. Let me acknowledge a few people, and then we shall head back to Parliament. And happy 35th birthday to Belinda Ivy Richter and Beryl Ernestina Richter of Osu. The twins, may this chapter bring you joy, success, and endless opportunities. Wishing you good health, cherished moments, and the fulfillment of your dreams. With love from your family. Also, happy 61st birthday to Vincent and Philip Richter as well. Wishing you the very best is from your family. Happy birthday to Moses Nete. Have a wonderful celebration. It's from Auntie Sarah. And happy 19th birthday to Ashiaki Tay. Have a wonderful new year. It's with love to, with love from your mom, actually. Then finally, happy birthday to Miss Doris Laja Ajay of the Apostolic Church Ghana, Good Shepherd Palace Assembly. May God bless you richly and satisfy the desires of your heart. Happy birthday to all of you. Thanks for staying with us. We'll cross over to Parliament in a bit, of course. Do stay with us for the rest of our programming on this channel.